Judges, please. No? Councillor Rawson.
Yeah. Councillor Hardy-Udin, sir.
Thank you. Any others? No? Right, thank you very much. Any declarations of interest, please?
Yes, I'm 13.5.
Is that you, Councillor Howard? Yes, sorry.
13.5. I have a gold card.
Yeah. Have you noted that, please? Thank you very much. Councillor Carr?
Same item, Madam Chair. 13.5. I also hold a gold card.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe? All those who haven't.
Same item, 13.
Yeah?
13.5 as well, Madam Mayor. I also have a gold card.
Are you noting all these, Mr Dunning? I think that...
Mm.
Could I say that I have a gold card? I am not declaring an interest in nonsense.
Thank you.
Councillor Leeming.
Like my esteemed colleague over there who also meets a shame, I have some.
Well, before more
Yes,
serious
Councillor Chair.
work starts, Mayor, I say I
Hang
have,
on a minute,
but I do
Robin.
not really see the relevance of that because
Yes,
there are
thank you.
thousands
Thank
of
you,
people in
Councillor
the city
Turner.
open.
Sorry, Councillor Chair.
I also have a gold card.
Right. Before anybody asks, I haven't got a gold card.
Madam Mayor, I also have a gold card and... Oh,
No.
shame.
Right, any more? That is it, is it? Thank you very much. Item 3, to approve the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 10th of September and the extraordinary meeting held of the Council held on the 6th of October. Anybody like to move those, please? No? Move them. Thank you. Thank you very much. Carried. To receive announcements from the Mayor. Well, I have one or two tonight, and they're all quite pleasant ones. The equality mark. In September 2007, we were externally audited over 2 days to see if our equality and diversity work was good enough to be awarded the equality mark, which is level 3 of the equality standard for local government. The auditors spoke to councillors, chief officers, managers, community groups and employee network members to make sure we were doing what we said we were doing in our paper submission. In July this year, Councillor Mike Carr and Anne Webster, our Equality and Diversity Manager, went to Manchester to officially receive the Equality Mark at a special presentation ceremony. The Equality Mark logo can now be used on council publications to demonstrate our achievements and commitment to equality and diversity. And it's displayed somewhere, I'm not sure where. It's there. Yes. Right. Can I put it down now? Everybody's seen it. It looks different from the back. Right, that's that one. Compact, yes, now this is nice. Compact Forum. The Derby Compact Forum is a framework for ensuring good working relationships between statutory and voluntary sector partners. It is a commitment by both sectors to work together for the benefit of our local community. Many of you in this room have taken an active role in the development of the Derby Compact through your involvement with the Compact Forum and through your links with voluntary sector organisations. I am proud to announce that the Derby Compact has won the Local Compact of the Year award. This is a prestigious national award which recognises the hard work that has gone into developing and implementing the Compact in Derby. I would like to ask an officer from the voluntary sector team of Derby City Council to come forward and receive the award on behalf of the Council and our statutory sector partners. The people involved are Katie Wing, Vivienne McCalla, Adrian McNaney and Sarah Swindle. I've not finished yet. Please could the voluntary sector representatives from the Derby Compact now come forward to accept the award on behalf of our voluntary sector partners. And now we have a rather nice picture unveiling. Councillor Wood and Councillor Hickson, would you like to come forward?
Madam Mayor, members of the Council, as you know, earlier this year we sadly lost former Councillor Geoffrey Tillett, who served this council with distinction as a councillor for 33 years. And it was the wish of both the Conservative Association in Derby and the Conservative group that the passing of Geoffrey would not be left unmarked, because he made such an enormous contribution to civic and political life in this city. As I've said, he served with distinction for 33 years, and that service in this council was beyond reproach, except for one small thing, you might think, and that is that it's Geoffrey that was to blame for me being a councillor for the last 17 years, because it was Geoffrey's encouragement and Geoffrey's tutelage that encouraged me, first of all, to stand as a member of the Conservative Party, and then much later on to become a Conservative councillor. He moved this city from being a town to a city back in 1977. And in fact, I was present, along with Robin Wood, I don't know who else actually in this chamber now, at Geoffrey's mayor-making ceremony, and was a guest on that occasion to see him installed as mayor, and also a guest at the time when he welcomed Her Majesty the Queen to confer city status on Derby. And I don't believe that anyone that was a councillor at that time could have done that with such aplomb and dignity and finesse as Geoffrey Tillett did. He was a man of enormous distinction, and he was a great friend. So this tribute today, this portrait that's been commissioned by the Conservative Party and the Conservative Association, is now going to be unveiled. I guess if Geoffrey was looking down now and looking on these proceedings, he would have said, with that wry smile that he had, what a loss of fuss about nothing, because that's the sort of man that he was. But I don't underestimate the enormous contribution he made to political and civic life in this city, which can't be understated, and which I suspect we'll never see again in our lifetimes. So having said those words, Madam Mayor, I'd like to invite Councillor Robin Wood, who was Councillor Tillett's partner, to say a few words and to formally unveil this portrait.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Philip, and thank you for the contribution that the Conservative Party has made in sponsoring what we're about to see. Philip has said most of what I would say, and if I really talked about Geoffrey, all I could do, you'd be, passing that motion to carry on after 10 o'clock. So I will be very brief. Geoffrey, yes, he was a councillor for 33 years. He was an alderman, he was mayor, and he was leader of the council, and that was a great ambition in his life to lead this council in the late 80s and very early 90s. He first came on the council in 1957, and in those days we all had diaries, and I think it's a retrograde step that we've lost the council diary, because he kept all his diaries, and I've spent the last few weeks going through the diaries from 1957 onwards, and it lists all the people who were on the council at the time. And in 1957 there were people who had actually come on this council in 1911. So there are people here who remember Geoffrey, who remembered people that took up the whole of the last century, sitting doing exactly what we're doing this evening. And I think sometimes we forget that the decisions we're making have possibly been discussed before and will be discussed long after we've gone. He had a great sense of humour. When he was off the council, and when I came back onto it, I would go home and he'd say, "Where have you been?" And I'd say, "A council meeting." And he'd say, "Any scandal then?" He always wanted to know the funny parts of what was happening. And I understand the portrait is going to hang on the staircase facing Nermal Dinser's distinguished portrait. Now, Geoffrey and Nermal shared a bit of a sense of humour, because Nermal would stand up and make a speech. In those days there was no limit on how long you could speak. You could go on for an hour if you wanted to. And Nomel used to make quite long speeches. And when Geoffrey was mayor, he stuck his tongue in his cheek and said, "I didn't quite hear all that, Councillor Dinser. Would you like to say it again?" And Mick Walker used to put his head in his hands like this. And, so it's quite fitting that he's going to face Nomel on the staircase. And I think that's enough from me. I'll go and pull that cover off.
Well, before you do, can I just say that I would like to pay tribute to Geoffrey Tillett as well, and particularly the arts, from an arts perspective, the work he did in the city. I think it's unrivalled, and I was very pleased to go to the service at the cathedral, and we did hear some wonderful music there. So I'm very pleased that you're going to unveil this now. Five, to receive any statement from members of the Council Cabinet. Are there any statements, please? No? Right, thank you. To receive questions from the public to members of the Council Cabinet and the answers to those questions. Now, I should say at this point that Mr. Richard Butler won't be here tonight to ask his questions, so I'm not going to read out the questions, but we will be sending him written answers. So, Mr. Dunn, first of all, please. Thank you. Councillor Nater.
Good evening, Mr. Dunn, and thank you. The following have been identified as public buildings in the city centre. The quad is open Monday to Thursday, 10 o'clock till 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. till 12 a.m. Sunday, 11 a.m. till 11 p.m. with some changes over the Christmas period, and there are no plans at this stage to change these arrangements. The Assembly Room public toilets are open from 7:30 to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Sunday. It is closed on Christmas days. These facilities will remain open until the public toilet facilities at the new bus station are open. The Queen's Leisure Centre is open Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 10 p.m, Saturday 9 a.m. to 6 p.m, and Sunday 9 a.m. to 10 p.m, with some changes over Christmas period, and there are no plans to change the arrangements. I've got a lot more times there, Mr. Dunn, but I can let you have the times later on. The Silk Mill Museum and Art Gallery and Pitford House Museum are open as follows, and there's a load of times there. With some changes over Christmas period, and there are no plans at this stage to change these arrangements. There are, of course, other buildings in the city centre which the public may perceive as being a public building. For example, the Westfield Centre, or indeed the railway station. But I have restricted my answer to those buildings which either publicly owned and or are managed that have toilets which public can access. In case of the toilets that are proposed closed on January 2009, Victoria Street toilets are about 350 metres from the Assembly Rooms toilets, but are much closer to the Museum and Art Gallery. The spot toilets are just outside one of the main entrances to the Westfield Centre, and the toilets in Westfield Centre are about 300 metres into the city centre itself. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. public access quad, I repeat the question, can public access quad and perhaps the council has toilets if there's nowhere else, please?
The buildings and toilets that I've mentioned are as follows, and we're looking at other facilities as well that may be open to the public as well.
Mr Dunn, your second question, please. Councillor Kerr.
Car parking to cover Sundays has been put on hold for the extended time will encourage more people into the city, or is this just as a public belief being proposed as yet another way of raising money? And also, have you considered the implications it will have for people of all religious denominations, many of whom are old and disabled, who wish to attend early church services, who are left with no other choice than to use their car as public transport does not commence in a certain area of the city before 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning?
Councillor Kerr, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr Dunn. Introducing charges is only likely to encourage people into the city if there is currently a shortage of easy parking. Parking levels on Sundays during shopping hours are currently very heavy. For example, I have personally found it difficult to find parking at Sunday lunchtime to give blood at the Spots banqueting suite. Other people may have had the same difficulty. When on-street parking was first introduced in the city centre in 2001, studies showed that 1,400 opportunities to park were created each day from the more frequent turnover of parked cars. A similar benefit should be provided on Sundays if the decision is taken to introduce charges. For people with restricted mobility or for other reasons, for other reasons, wish to park close to their destination, introducing parking charges should make this easier, as people without such needs are more likely to park in car parks further away. The decision on changes to parking charges will now be taken at the Cabinet meeting on the 25th of November. The review of charges includes reductions as well as increases in charges, with the overall aim of making better use of parking space in the city, encouraging people to use alternatives to the car for some journeys and to make more use of the car parks in the Cathedral Quarter. Profit from parking all goes to support highways and transport activities, from repairing roads to teaching road safety skills in schools, thus helping to keep the council tax down. Later on Sundays, after shops have shut, the levels of parking are less clear. I cycled round myself last Sunday in the early evening, and in some areas parking was heavy and in others it was light. Parking attendants have been gathering data on the situation over several Sundays, and this will be provided to the Cabinet before a decision is taken. I accept that there are few buses available for 8 o'clock on Sundays, though all areas now have services that reach town before 10 o'clock. However, charges would encourage all travellers to consider alternatives, including car sharing and cycling, as well as buses.
A supplementary, Mr Dunn, please.
Yes, I'll go back to my original question. Councillor Kerr, do you honestly believe that this is not a money-making exercise?
It is partly a money-raising exercise, but it isn't as simple as that is the only purpose, because there are many other purposes that are helped to serve by having a charge for parking.
Next question from Ms Penny Delbreux, please, to Councillor Nater.
A month ago, does the Council believe it represents a well-presented architectural building with structural quality that will stand the test of time?
Councillor Nater, please. Thank you.
Yes, the Council does believe that. Thank you.
Have you got a supplementary, please?
Yes, I do. And Councillor, could you explain explain to me and the rest of the council has why it's already showing signs of considerable wear. The cladding has great chunks taken out of some of the panels, and some of them, those panels, actually are loose. The revolving door, where the metal clip, one of the metal clips is used to keep it in place, the glass is fractured and has been for well over 2 weeks now. That same revolving door, the doormat, the mat is carpet pieces that have gaps and are easily kicked up. It is a health and safety issue. Why has this happened?
Sorry, Ms. Abreu, let me just say thank you for your question. I'm forgetting my manners there. I do apologise. Basically, on your supplementary questions, there's a few teething problems that are happening with the quad building, but your specific questions around the structure, I'm prepared to answer that as well. Quad is a building that is very specific to place, clearly responded to the context in which it sits, as well as offering something new and dynamic on the fourth side of the marketplace. The building is a combination of design, quality and flexible adaptability, and utilises high-quality materials and construction, which should ensure its timelessness. Damage to the exterior of the quad is an unforeseen outcome of recent landscaping works. These have provided a form of ramp up from Corporation Street traffic lights to the exterior wall of the quad. Young people are using this as a means of jumping their bikes as high as possible up to and against the walls of the quad. This is evident from tyre marks that have been left on the wall in the area around the damage that has occurred. The damage has been caused in this significant impact being concentrated onto a very small area, point where the wheels make contact with the wall. To resolve the issue, damaged panels will be replaced, and it has been proposed to put a row of cycle park stands along the wall. These will clear of circular style seen in other parts of the city centre and will form an efficient barrier to protecting the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nader. Ms Derber to Councillor Carr, Councillor Kerr, please. Thank you.
It is now nearly 8 months since that fateful Friday in March when many of us witnessed the partial destruction of the Hippodrome, and it is well over a year when I first raised concerns about the building. When is the Council going to use its powers to ensure its ultimate restoration, and to this end erect scaffolding to shore up the remaining structure and protect it from the elements with a temporary roof?
Good evening, Ms Dabru. Like you, I was desperately saddened by the partial demolition of the Hippodrome last spring. However, you will no doubt be aware that in April the Council secured an injunction in the High Court to prevent the owner carrying out further demolition. And in August it carried out urgent repair works to the remaining roof and the Green Lane elevation, and this was also complying with legal procedures. The Council is now in discussions with the owner and his agents about the future use of the building, and he has appointed specialists to bring forward a scheme quickly, which will be the subject of a listed building and planning application. This is a major step forward, as the owner had previously refused to meet with the Council. However, this has not stopped the Council expecting further action by the owner to safeguard the building. In September, the Planning Committee agreed for the Council to serve an enforcement notice on the owner to require repairs to be done. This process can be challenged by the owner, which could result in significant delays to any work being done on the building. So, provided that the owner vigorously and expeditiously progresses his proposals through the planning system, the Council has agreed not to bring the enforcement notice into effect until the applications have been determined by the Planning Control Committee. In the circumstances, it is not considered appropriate or expedient for the Council to carry out any further urgent works to the building at present, such as the erection of a temporary roof, as the significant cost of this would fall initially on the council taxpayers of Derby, with no guarantee that it could be recovered.
Have you a supplementary, please? Yes. Yes. You'd like to ask it, thank you.
As far as I'm aware, we're still only at the discussion stage, and we haven't actually received a formal application from the owner or his agents. But there are a number of options being discussed with our planning officers. So we are pressing with that, and if meetings stop and if we cease getting cooperation with his agents, then we will be looking again at what steps to take.
Thank you very much. That concludes that item. Item 7, to receive any written questions about the business or functions of the Derbyshire Police Force and Fire Authority in Derby Homes. I haven't any. Item 8, to receive any written questions from non-council cabinet members to members of the council cabinet, and there are millions. Thanks. The first one then, please, from Councillor Holmes to Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Recent comments made by both the Leader and Deputy Leader of the Council suggest, and in some cases confirm, there are significant pressures concerning the forthcoming 2009-10 budget. Could the Leader offer Council an approximation of the current budget deficit and an overview of the key decisions the Liberal Democrat administration plan to take to address it?
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Some of the emerging pressures, including energy and fuel price increases, waste landfill costs, increased pension costs and highways maintenance costs, were included in our revenue budget strategy report that was agreed by Cabinet on the 30th of September and is seeking Council approval later on the agenda tonight. Since then, Cabinet members have been working with Chief Officers on evaluating budgetary pressures and options for financial savings in order to balance the Council's budget for 2009-10, 2010-11 and 2011-12. As things stand, there is a £3 million funding gap in 2010-11, which we inherited from the previous administration. This is currently work in progress, and we are aiming to have a draft budget finalised in December, which will be summarised in our budget consultation pack and will be circulated to all members in January 2009. As for your question re the current budget deficit, a revenue monitoring report for the period to 30th September 2008 is on the agenda for next week's Cabinet, which shows a forecasted overspend position of £526,000, which is a variance of only 0.3% against the total budget for the year. Corrective actions are currently being taken to ensure this overspend is brought into balance by the end of the financial year.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Holmes?
I do, Madam Mayor, as you will well imagine. Can you confirm my considered view that your Liberal Democrat budget will include closing play areas across the city, closing public toilets, closing the council house cashier service, the closure of a care home, cuts in frontline street cleaning services, massive cuts in road and pavement repairs, big increases in short-stay car parking, increasing charges for marriages and civil partnerships, and to top it all, a council tax hike of 5% at the worst possible time for the people of this city?
Councillor Jones, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That was quite a long list of closures. We are currently working with last year's budget that the last administration, which was a Labour and Tory administration, set. We are working within the confines of that budget and will continue to do so. Yes, but not to the budget, because this council set it last year and you set that budget, not me.
Excuse me, please. Can we let Councillor Jones continue? Have you finished, Councillor Jones? Does that answer your question then, Councillor Holmes? I mean, but the answer you want, but it answered your question.
No, Madam Mayor.
Right, thank you. Next question then, Councillor Bayliss to Councillor Carr. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got two questions even to Councillor Carr. I shall start with number one. Could Councillor Carr give an explanation of how the recycling bank on Cruton Gardens was removed despite his personal assurances that it would not be before the rollout of the 3-bin scheme on the Cruton Gardens estate?
Councillor Carr, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I can provide an answer. Thank you, Councillor Bayliss, and good evening, everybody. Strong public support for recycling in the city has led us to achieving a 40.5% recycling rate in 2007-8, and Derby City Council is 9th out of 81 unitaries for recycling. These successes allowed us to start withdrawing, as you say, recycling bring sites because of our comprehensive curbside recycling system. Unfortunately, a misunderstanding in issue instructions led to the Cruton Way banks being removed. As you said, I had given a personal assurance to both you and Councillor Graves that this would not happen. This error was corrected. I'm at personal interest, and the recycling banks were restored within 24 hours. A personal apology has been sent to Councillor Graves and myself by the Director, and an explanatory notice with an apology has been placed on the recycling banks at Cruton Way. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bayliss, do you have a supplementary?
On this occasion, the incompetence speaks for itself, Madam Mayor.
Well, while you're on your feet, would you like to ask your next question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the morning of the 1st of October, there was, unfortunately, a motor accident outside the conference centre on London Road, near the junction of Ascot Drive. One of the City Council's road sweepers was directing the traffic so that the paramedics and the police could tend the injured motorcyclist, as the ambulance had not arrived when I was allowed past the scene. Could you identify for the Council who this employee is and confirm whether they have been commended for their conduct, which was above and beyond their normal duties?
Councillor Carr? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bayliss. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Bayliss. The name of the road sweeper was Mr Shane Shaw, and I informed Council that I have personally passed on both Councillor Bayliss's and my own thanks for the actions he took, as this is an excellent example of the way our staff get involved and help citizens in the community, even when it is not a direct part of their role. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bayliss?
No, I just echo my thanks to Mr Shaw, and now I know his name. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Banwaite to Councillor Allen, please. No, sorry, Councillor Bayliss to Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following on from the motion passed unanimously by full council regarding cars parked at Sale and Harbour Road and other parts of the city, could the Cabinet member give Council an update and progress report on work undertaken to implement the motion decided by Council?
Hi, and good evening to you too. Thank you. Officers from the Planning, Highways, Trading Standards, Legal Services and Neighbourhood Management have been meeting to consider all available legal options for addressing perceived problems of selling cars on the highway. Whilst it is evident that action can be taken, it is also clear that it may have unforeseen consequences which may not be beneficial for the neighbourhood. It is therefore important that in drawing up a protocol for dealing with such issues across the city, individual circumstances can be taken into account before selecting the appropriate legislation or procedure, that neighbourhood boards are informed of options and their potential consequences. As Harvey Road was the subject of the Council motion, officers are hoping to draw up a draft protocol which can be tested against that situation and which will be discussed with members of Bolton and Ulverston wards before it is finalised for use in that and then in other cases. I am hopeful that those discussions will take place before the end of this calendar year. In the meantime, trading standards officers and neighbourhood managers continue to monitor the position in areas where there are known to be incidents, and they are doing all they can to discourage the activity without, at this stage, taking legal action.
Councillor Bayliss?
Apologies for not saying good evening, Councillor Kerr, but could you explain why you've made so little progress on something that there overwhelming cross-party support of full council?
Councillor Kerr, thank you.
Full Council's support does not miraculously provide financial support and officer time to achieve things, even if there is that desire. Now, we have within this Council a Highways and Transport programme which has been traditionally agreed early in the year as part of the budget process. And if you want to put additional items into that, then it requires something else to be taken out to make space. In this instance, it's not specifically a highways issue. It could be addressed in a number of other ways. And the first stage, which has been squeezed into this year's work programme has been looking at the policy side of it so that we have a way forward which could then be implemented in the coming year if that is what the board makes a priority.
Thank you. Councillor Banwick to Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Allen. Is the Cabinet member satisfied with the provision of council services to Derby's visually impaired children?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Council meets its statutory requirements in respect of visually impaired and blind children, whether these are educational or social care needs. In doing this, the Council works in partnership with our colleagues in the health service and the voluntary sector. As with any group of young people with a specific need, there are discretionary areas where more could be done where resources permit. Within these parameters, I am satisfied that these children and disabled children generally receive a good service in Derby. Madam Mayor, I think it should also be noted that in the recent APA of the Children and Young People's Department, it was noted that outcomes for children and young people with learning difficulties and/or disabilities continue to improve from an already sound base. Where, however, concerns are expressed about the quality of provision, we take the views of children and young people and their parents seriously. And if Councillor Banwaite has an individual case in mind which underpins this question, I'd be pleased to hear about it outside the Council meeting and explore that situation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Have you a supplementary, Councillor Banwaite?
Madam Mayor, thank you. I mean, this did come about as some individual casework. During my work with council officers, it brought to my attention that there are currently 153 visually impaired children in Derby. And they are provided much less support than is provided to children that are hard of hearing. And as we're well aware, they're also provided quite good facilities at Kedleston Road at the school there. What I really would like to know is, I'm aware that there is clearly a need for additional support, and that can be funded through £25,000 to £30,000 of resource to provide community support worker to these families.
Yes, yes it is.
Yes.
It's my meeting. I'll say when.
Thank you.
Yeah, would you get to your question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Given that the Cabinet members are part of an administration that is committed to spending £1 million on Gate and Swansea, and may I add substantially more than is actually required, can he give a commitment that he's prepared to set aside the £25,000 to £30,000 essential to provide family support for the 153 visually impaired children of our city? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, thank you.
Madam Mayor, no, I won't give that commitment, but I will give a different commitment that I will look into the matter, and if Councillor Banwaite gives me the detail of what he thinks he can get for the 25,000, 30,000, we'll see if we can find it in next year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Banwaite to Councillor Kerr, please.
Good evening, Councillor Kerr. What decisions is the Cabinet member for Highways taking to fix the problems of major delays to highways issues that have been raised by councillors through the forums and casework?
Councillor Kerr, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Councillor Mabwaite. The brief answer is considerably more decisions than were taken by the previous Cabinet member, whose inattention to the details of this new contract allowed it to get into the dreadful state that I inherited last May. However, I accept that this is an important issue for the city. Many councillors and residents, myself included, have been frustrated by the poor performance of the new partnership contract, especially when it had been sold to us with such high hopes only a year ago. I can also assure you that the senior managers and staff from both the City Council and partners, Carillion, are also extremely concerned about the poor performance. They have developed an improvement plan to start getting highways maintenance in Derby back on track. Some of the actions that I personally have taken over the last few months include supporting officers to rationalise the on-street work crews, and there have been staffing changes as a result, pressing for more experience from other similar contracts to be sought for Derby. Carillion now have a manager working here from a longer-standing, more successful contract. Encouraging innovation in work management, and a recent trial on new equipment has been successful for some types of work, and spending a day considering the work stream from pothole to patch. This has identified a number of issues which I will be discussing with staff later in this week. From my investigations, I feel that a combination of personnel, resource pressures and changes in legislation affecting roadworks have meant that key resources were not focused enough on tackling some of the more fundamental issues. I do believe that this partnership contract can be turned around, but it will require flexibility and resolve. However, I feel that some of the issues that need resolving are not new and could have been identified once the planned initial 15-week trial was concluded very early this year. It is surprising that the previous Cabinet member did not take more interest in such a significant contract when it was still in its early days. Unfortunately, because of this delay, the backlog in work and the expectations of staff will be harder to change.
Councillor Banwaite, please. I'm sure you've got a supplementary.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Just a point of information first. At no time did council officers of the Highways Department actually say to me there were actually any problems or issues with the contract prior to May.
And I'd like to... Question, please.
Question, please.
Question. All right, all right. Question, please. Thank you.
Given that the Cabinet member who has been charged since May, and given that this council didn't face such damaging headlines as what I'm about to show you, and I'm sure many of you have seen the Telegraph, and that's dated Friday, October the 31st, while the Cabinet member was in charge. And it says here, 25 million let down. Road repairs waiting list up by 50%.
This is all fascinating, Councillor Banwaite, but we do need
and given that, Madam Mayor, I've received apology after apology from council officers on a range of basic highways issues. It throws up the question of, is anybody accountable?
Question, please. I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor, I'm coming to that. My question my question is quite clear, Madam Mayor. It's about accountability. And that is, can the Cabinet member answer who is actually accountable for the performance of the Highways Department? And a simple yes or no. Is she accountable?
Are you accountable, please?
I'm accountable to the electorate of Derby, and the electorate of Derby decided last May that they did not wish the previous people to be continuing to run it.
Councillor Graves to Councillor Nater, please.
You took me by surprise there, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. Good evening, Councillor Nater. Councillor Nater, what can you tell me about the progress of Alveston Park and the racecourse applications? You will recall during my time as the Cabinet member that substantial funding was secured from the Football Foundation for this project. And I am now concerned that no information has come forward since May when you took over. I have asked the Director on the 2nd of October and more recently the 5th of November, and I am yet to receive a reply to my concerns, which I find unacceptable. Have you discussed this during your bi-monthly briefing?
Councillor Nader, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Councillor Graves. I do like your red hat as well. It's very fetching. Firstly, Councillor Graves, I need to correct you factually. Incorrect statement in your question. I am in regular contact with officers and in fact have a weekly briefing from officers on key issues. Planning applications for both schemes were submitted and registered on 22nd of May 2008. However, the Football Foundation bids for both schemes were submitted on 13th of June 2008. So it is incorrect for you to say that the funding was secured under your administration. And indeed, both bids cannot be approved by the Football Foundation Board until planning approval is received. I am aware of both the racecourse and Alveston Park projects, and I can assure you that progress is being made. Having spoken to the Director, I can inform you that the reason for the delay is due to the time being taken to secure planning permission. I understand this has been explained to you, and I am aware that the Director has asked the Head of Parks to confirm this to you and provide a briefing following your email on 5th of November 2008. If you have not received this, I will take the matter up with the Head of Service personally, as I am sure the Director will. However, moving to matters raised on the racecourse application, this was one objection from Sport England, but I am happy to report that this has now been resolved, and so this project can now move forward once the planning permission has been received. The Alveston Park scheme has also received an objection to the planning permission, and this has necessitated a revised scheme, delaying the planning process as there was a need to reconsult on the amended scheme. It is understood that the Planning Officer is preparing a final report to take to Planning Committee in December 2008 for a decision. At this point, I will inform Councillor Graves of the next steps and the timeline for this project. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Graves.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. That was an excellent answer.
Councillor Graves, then. Another question might get an excellent answer.
Good evening, Councillor Naser. Councillor Nater, what strategy are you taking with the Council's lease on the Playhouse, bearing in mind that Mr Powers plans on selling his lease with the Council to the highest bidder?
Councillor Nater, please.
Thank you, Councillor Graves, and good evening to you, and I do really appreciate your weight loss. You've done a tremendous job. I need to do the same.
I agree.
But, Councillor Graves, my approach is one which has been supported by 3 group leaders. We are about to enter into a conditional contract with tenants, under which we will pay £325,000 for the assets and surrender of the Playhouse lease. This will then go to creditors for approval. This is seen as the best way of securing the theatre. There has been a political unity on this subject so far, and I hope all wish to continue. Your group leader will inform if we have a change on our position. Thank you.
Councillor Graves.
Satisfied with the answer, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Easily satisfied. Councillor Hickson, please, to Councillor Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the Leader of the Council like to take this opportunity to apologise to the representatives of Toyota City for the grave offence caused by her failure and that of every other Liberal Democrat councillor on this council to attend the civic reception held on Sunday last? And will she explain to the council why neither she nor a single Liberal Democrat councillor from the controlling group were present at this important event?
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just move my seat. Whilst I personally regret that I was unable to attend what I agree was an important event, I do not think an apology is necessary. Neither do I believe that grave offence has been caused to our visitors. All members will know that the final notification of the date and time of the reception was only given 6 days in advance. This was because of final daily fine-tuning by the Mayor's office by email with the visiting group from Toyota City. I received the invitation then on Monday, prior to the reception on Sunday, and I found I was unable to attend because of an existing commitment. It is a very unfortunate coincidence that no one else represented this group, but at the same time I should point out the very positive action I personally took to ensure that the planned event became a reality. Some months ago, the Director of Corporate and Adult Services informed me of the plans to mark the 10th anniversary of the twinning. I needed to acknowledge a necessary overspend on the mayoral budgets to ensure that we could mark this occasion with an appropriate level of hospitality. It was the same paper that needed my approval for expenditure to enable our own mayor to travel to Japan at the beginning of the month to represent Derby at the first part of this programme. Without hesitation, I recognise the importance of the relationship with Toyota City, and I know that the Mayor represented Derby admirably on that occasion, as did the chairs of Derbyshire County and South Derbyshire District Council. It was entirely appropriate that the hosting of the return visit was the role for our Mayor, and again she did an excellent job. The delegation from Toyota City knows that our civic head is the Mayor, and anticipate that the holder of that office be the figurehead for the twinning activity. It is unfortunate I could not attend on Sunday evening, but as you will know, Councillor Hickson, Derby did a good job of celebrating the anniversary, and we have caused no offence to the delegation from Toyota City.
Councillor Hickson.
Well, a fascinating response, Madam Mayor, and I note that the Leader of the Council was able to attend a champagne reception at Chatsworth 2 days earlier without any difficulty. And the point to make here, I think, is this council would acknowledge that this council is paying a considerable amount of money for a leader and deputy leader of the council which amounts to roughly £50,000. And if the leader of the council, if the leader of the, council,
it's my meeting. Carry on, Councillor Hickson.
The council,
are
currently paying £50,000 on top of standard allowances to employ a leader and a deputy leader of this council. If the leader of the council can't attend an event, it's expected that the deputy leader of the council will attend the event. She's still not answered why. And I want her to answer why she snubbed Toyota, which was an important delegation and an important employer in this city, and is she not taking the duties of her post frivolously?
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Carry on. The floor is yours.
Yeah, deep breath. Councillor Hickson, I've taken this afternoon's opportunity, as you want to point your finger at me, to look at your own attendance record. Don't forget, he's a member of the police authority. He gets paid for that. He does not attend more. The attendance on the internet doesn't show that. It shows only 53% attendance.
Leader of the council, will you please answer the question?
In my first speech, there's no reason why I can't come back and point fingers at him.
Be quiet. Thank you. Right. Councillor Hickson to Councillor Carr, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As St Helens House is currently not in use and fenced off from the public, would it be sensible to stop floodlighting it all night every night? This would save energy and help the council reduce its carbon footprint. And will the Cabinet member therefore consider this suggestion?
Councillor Carr, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Councillor Hickson. Yeah, I completely agree. It would be sensible and it would reduce the carbon footprint. I would be prepared to consider it. However, could I point out that St Helens House is now leased out to another owner. We do not control it. The lessee is responsible for paying the electricity bill, and he has been spoken to and he has decided to continue the floodlighting.
Councillor Hickson.
So is the Cabinet member then confirming that there are no costs for this floodlighting currently falling on the City Council?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Jennings to Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Jones. I doubt that I'll be as easily pleased as Councillor Graves. In a recent report to the Scrutiny Management Commission, revised corporate priorities were proposed, which included Liberal Democrat manifesto commitments. Paragraph 3.4 of document 9A of tonight's paper refers to this. Will the Leader of the Council please show us a copy of this Liberal Democrat manifesto and tell both Council and the people of Derby where this document can be obtained, and will she now, for the record, list the Liberal Democrat manifesto commitments she wishes the Council to include as part of the budget process?
Thank you. Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you. I'm really grateful to you for asking that question. Are you all sitting comfortably?
On our website, I've got spare copies if you want one, Jennings.
I'll carry on and answer the question now.
Please.
Councillor Jennings has publicly stated he and his group would not support my group's priorities, whatever they were. However, I'm still grateful that you've asked this question because, as my colleagues have said, our top 10 Liberal Democrat pledges were on the website. They have been there since April this year. They were delivered through tens of thousands of letterboxes across this city in just about every single ward. I'm surprised you didn't get one, actually, but then maybe you're not on our mailing list. And it's a great opportunity for me to have a look back at our top 10 pledges. The first one, and these, as they say on the X Factor, in no particular order. They don't need to be. But we did pledge back in April that we would get tough on antisocial behaviour.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. The list in front of me is not a manifesto.
It is!
It's a list of
It is a manifesto! And because you don't want me to have the opportunity to go through, I will continue with my answer.
Just please calm down.
The first one,
This is a council chamber.
is we will get tough on antisocial behaviour across Derby. We will make our streets safer for local people. And I think in view of the events of the last couple of weeks in this city, that is a pledge that I would hope that every single member in this chamber could support. We in this party are totally committed to working closely with the police and the Community Safety Partnership at a leadership and a local level. In fact, I have just come back, just before this meeting, from a meeting with the police about those... Well, I mean, actually, it was a very serious meeting, but you can poke fun. It was about the very events of last week.
Just carry... Yes.
I have repeatedly met with police. I've met with the chair of the police authority. I'm on the CSP board. The Liberal Democrats are working hard to tick off that first pledge. Pledge number 2. We will scrap Labour's plans to introduce parking meters in areas like around Littleover village shops. That is a pledge that was very easy to fulfil. We have scrapped the plans for those parking meters in Littleover, where we worked with the people, we consulted with them, we carried out proper consultation, unlike the previous administration, and as a result of that, the parking meters were scrapped. Number 3, we will improve public transport across Derby. The bus station project, when we came to power, as it says here, was in chaos, and many of our bus routes needed revamping. Well, I'm quite enjoying this. You gave me the opportunity. I'm nearly taking it.
I'm not.
The bus station is now well underway, on schedule. And we have, as a cabinet, facilitated that because
yes, carry on. Just a moment, please.
Could we try a point of order? I do believe that the leader of the council is spreading untruths about the bus station. The contract for the bus station, as any officer will tell them, they normally believe the officer, was in place and was being acted upon. It was not in chaos when they came to power. That is absolutely and totally a lie and untrue.
Thank you for your contribution, Councillor Roberts. Carry on, please.
Can I continue, please?
You can continue now.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, that scheme is now underway. The evidence is out there for appearing before our very eyes over the hoardings. But the Cabinet did more than that. When the developer came to us asking for financial help in this economic time, we reviewed the bond and we did something about that. In the last few weeks, we have seen new bus timetables coming in on some of the routes with extended Sunday time, and that is something else we can tick off. We said we would stop Labour's congestion charging plans. Well, actually, I will say that we saw the biggest U-turn in history on that because they tried to salvage their stance. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Well, maybe thanks to the Conservatives, but it didn't do them any good, did it? Pledge E. We will give local people a say in the decisions that affect them, and we will back this up with the cash to enable people to get things done in their communities. This is talking about our neighbourhood agenda. We as Liberal Democrats feel that and consider that the neighbourhoods...
Just a minute, please. Just a minute, please. Look, will you please be quiet?
Madam Mayor, point of...
Because, we just can't hear the answer. Just carry on, please. And if you...
Madam Mayor, point of information, please. Point of information. I've got to emphasise that we've just seen the papers for the next
It isn't important. Please sit down, Councillor Van Waite.
The Liberal Democrats will be pulling over £80,000
£80,000
to address the overspend of the highways maintenance budget.
Van Waite.
And this money is set aside for public transport improvement.
Please sit down, Councillor Van Waite. Thank you. Carry on,
May I continue, Madam Mayor? Thank you. I think I was at Pledge E, which is... Well,
how many more are there?
Oh, 10, but then they did ask what our manifesto was, so you're going to get it. We will give local people a say in their decisions. This is the neighbourhood agenda. Now, I would again hope that across this chamber we've got support for this. When we came in, we did inherit boards and forums, and they are doing good work. But there is much more work to do on those agendas. We're only just starting. And it's our pledge that we will continue that work. within the constraints of the budget that we've inherited. But there is an opportunity, is there not, to look at budgets for next year. Now, of course, if you don't support our plans for a budget, then, well, that's your problem. But we may well put some money into there. Next one, then. We will get tough on graffiti, fly posting and fly tipping. This is a continual area and a sore in most local authorities. Again, it's something that the people were telling us that they wanted action on. This is something that Councillor Carr is working very hard on with his officers to bring out new initiatives, and we will have to see. We are only 6 months into this administration, and we accept there are still things to do. G, we will concentrate on getting good quality public services, not wasting taxpayers' money on gimmicks and pet projects. No, not like the swimming pool. That was a legal decision. Not like the swimming pool, but we are still suffering the consequences of your administration's bridge, which is still not finished and is still costing this council money. H, we will protect and enhance our precious green spaces. We will take action.
On the point of order, if we're going to be subjected to these shrew-like diatribes, we can't hear these shrew-like tones as they're being shouted down the microphone. And for disabled members of this council and disabled members of the public, this is really going to be extremely painful and distressing for them. So I would ask the leader of the council to tone it down.
Please don't use shrew-like tones, Councillor Jones.
Perhaps they'd show me the courtesy of listening, then I won't have to shout.
So would the Conservative, the Labour group, please listen?
Point of order, Madam Mayor. My doctor said I mustn't get excited and it's getting too much for me. And I'll have to go home.
Right. Carry on, please, Councillor.
May I continue, Madam Mayor? Thank you, Madam.
Carry on, but not in shrew-like tones, please. Thank you.
Well, as I said, if they listen, I won't shout. Green spaces. We have reviewed things already, like the play areas. Councillor Carr, again, has been very busy with that, and we've already heard in the answer to the question. Have you answered those questions yet, or am I prejudging things? Yep. Oh, dear, I'm sorry, I'm spoiling your fun. Well, there's so many questions, one tends to lose track of where we are, doesn't one? Play areas. There were 10 listed for closure. I now gather they're down to, what, 4, Councillor? Yes, 4. So, again, we're looking at green spaces. We're also doing a bigger piece of work, and we're working to think about how our urban areas and back garden development can be better managed. Other cities like Birmingham have done this, but we have had some success recently in defending planning appeals without costs being awarded against the council. And again, I want to say a big thank you to Councillor Carr for that. The next one, Pledge I, is we will consider the environment in everything we do. Climate change is one of the biggest challenges we face today. Liberal Democrats have always been very concerned about climate change, and we feel that this should be a part of absolutely every paper on the council. Now, we're not at that level yet. That's work in progress. We are looking at things like how to improve this council house for energy efficiency when we do the refurbishment. We're going to be looking at innovative ways of doing that. That is certainly part of this administration's plans. We want to see what we can do to save fuel and environmental costs on the fleet. We're looking at that. We are supporting the public transport agenda, of course, because that's getting people out of their cars and onto public transports. There's also a cycle scheme for employees of this council, and that's been rolled out to, or we're trying to roll that out to members. So again, well, there's a little bit of work to do on that. We've only been here 6 months, but I think we're doing pretty well so far. J. We will value and preserve Derby's heritage and make it fit for the 21st century. Derby has some wonderful heritage, and we've already touched space on the paintings thing, I'm quite glad that I've written in here exactly what I was doing at the champagne reception. I didn't have any champagne because I was driving. But we were there because the council, this council, put in £10,000 to a project which is taking photographs of our... No, it's more. It's taking photographs of the public, the art in our public ownership. Now, much of that, the oil paintings are not on public display. We've obviously got some very famous ones that are on display in the gallery and often go out on tour. But because of lack of space, there are hundreds and hundreds of paintings in our basement which are very beautiful that nobody ever sees. A fantastic brochure is going to be produced, and we will be sorting this out now. This was a very worthy project. So it's something that can be used by people who are... Is
it really relevant?
Oh, yes, it's really relevant.
Well, yeah, I'm sure.
So this is another project that we were keen to get involved in. It was right and proper that, as we had pledged money to that the leader of the council should go. I gather the mayor was invited but had a prior engagement.
Oh, nobody told me. I missed the champagne reception.
Well, I'm really sorry about that.
Missed out on the champagne.
This is just a flavour of the many ideas that the Liberal Democrat group have started off already. There are more in the pipeline. I think this, after just 6 months, is a really fantastic achievement. Every single one of those pledges we've made a start on or completed. But there's still further to go, and longer term, we'll be putting forward more of our plans as part of the budget process. We need to have a costed, balanced budget. These will come into the council in its usual budget process. And so I want to thank Councillor Jennings for the opportunity to answer fully that question.
Point of Madam Mayor, point of request, please. Can I ask Councillor Jennings to be a bit more careful about his questions?
Well, I was just about to say I hardly dare ask this, but have you got a supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Grace. But I did say at the start that I don't think I would be as easily pleased as you were. I just think I'd like to say I think we've been very remiss, Madam Mayor, if I may, just before I do ask my supplementary, to welcome back one of our councillors who's been missing whilst ill. And I think it's been very remiss of us not to welcome her back. We do welcome you back very, very much, and it's lovely to see you looking so well. Thank you. Right, Madam Mayor, my supplementary, I've really got to start with the fact that the more politically adept amongst us will know that this isn't a manifesto. This is a bunch of wishy-washy
Can we have a question?
Blown up to A3 to look good. And the question really we'll get to in a moment, but...
As soon as convenient, please.
There are several questions, but I'll try and roll them all into one. Where in your manifesto does it include closing play areas across the city? Where in the manifesto does it include closing public toilets? Where in the manifesto does it include cutting council services? Where does it include in your manifesto increasing charges for council services? Where does it include in your manifesto increasing car parking charges? Where does it include in your manifesto the inability to manage a maintenance contract for our roads and pavements?
Can you just get to the main question, please? Councillor Jennings, would you get to the question, please?
Closure of care homes. Where in your manifesto does this include anything at all to do with what you're currently doing in this council?
I'm sorry, Councillor Jennings.
Absolutely nothing.
Councillor Jennings, please, I'm speaking. Would you please get to the main question? We understand what you're saying.
The main question, Madam Mayor, is really a question of ability. There doesn't seem There does not seem to be any ability in this Liberal Democrat
I did ask for a question, please.
membership to lead this city forward. Where is the vision for this city in this document? That's what I want to know. Where is the vision for a city of Derby in this document?
Yeah, we heard the first one. Now, thank you. Could I have a response, please?
Well, what a shame. The people in the city made a decision on the vision at the last election. I have here, you probably can't see this on the webcam, but it's a graph. The only party that's consistently grown in numbers since, when did it start? 1992 is, guess what? The Liberal Democrat Party.
Madam Mayor, point of information. More people in Derby voted Conservative in May than at any other party.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Hickson, please, to Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The recent disclosures about £35,000 being spent by head teachers on a two-day conference at a luxury hotel is an abuse of public funds and has gone down very badly with the public, especially at a time of economic downturn. Will the Cabinet member agree with me that this expenditure was highly inappropriate and that it would have been better used to provide facilities for pupils? And will he now take steps to make sure that the assembly rooms is available for future conferences at nil cost to schools?
Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I wrote to Councillor Hickson on the 31st of October stating my position on this conference, so I can only assume that this question is not designed to get the answer which he already has, but rather to engage in mischief making. So I'll read it again. In view of the damaging coverage of the Head Teachers Residential Conference, I have looked into it and I thought it would be helpful to set out some facts about it. First, and perhaps most important, this is not a case of Derby City Council paying £35,000 for a conference. Incidentally, the figure should be £31,000. I don't know where the 35's come from, but we'll not quibble about the global figure. It's not a case of Derby City Council paying £35,000 for a conference, which is then free to head teachers. Nor would that funding be available for alternative expenditure by the council. Each school pays from their individual school budget, over which we have no control for many years. If schools didn't spend this amount on the conference, it is highly likely they would spend it on other training. A planning group consisting of the director, a head of service and head teacher representatives arranges the conference each year. Head teachers then decide whether to attend. If they decided it was not value for money, they would not buy places and there would be no conference. On average, around 80 head teachers attend. There is a strong rationale for this being a residential conference. The first was held in 2002 and was planned at a time when the council had been very close to government intervention, mainly because of problems in the education department and particularly due to a very poor relationship with schools. It was important to get head teachers away from Derby for a very focused conference over 2 days where they stayed for the full conference. Now they are held closer to Derby, but the residential element continues to be important for team building, bonding, informal networking and strengthening relationships. It is, of course, hard to measure that, but in contrast to 2002, the relationship between the local authority and schools is exceptionally strong, more so than in most other local authorities, and this has brought about tangible improvements in outcomes in our schools. That would not be achievable in the assembly rooms, which would certainly not be free, or any other Derby City Council facility. For the last 4 years, Eastwood Hall, a dedicated conference centre in Nottinghamshire, has been used. Leaders and education, children, young people spokesperson have always been invited to drop in. This year, Eastwood decided that they had a more profitable commercial customer and rescinded our provisional booking. The availability of other suitable venues was checked, i.e. residential venues large enough and flexible enough to hold up to 100 head teachers plus other delegates, with a table layout to enable group work and discussion, as well as all the audiovisual equipment, etc. Horcross presented the best option in terms of cost and facilities. The spa facilities were not the deciding factor. There is, however, a growing and serious national head teacher shortage, and a high-quality conference makes a contribution to better recruitment and retention here in Derby. In practice, the hotel's facilities could be used only for a couple of hours in the late afternoon on the first day. A pool and gym equipment were available before the conference timings, as they tend to be in any conference venue. While the use of the pool and the gym was included in the cost, head teachers using other facilities paid for those out of their own pockets. The conference represents very good value for money, as indicated by the costs of similar conferences in other local authorities. Many conferences cost up to twice as much, as many of us know. A one-day Capita Education Conference held in London, for example, costs around £550 for the private sector and £350 for the public sector, with additional travel costs. Ours is organised on a non-profit making basis. Costs here have been kept at much the same level each year, and we attract nationally and internationally recognised speakers with a reputation for improving schools. The bottom line is that this develops the leadership and management qualities of our heads, which in turn benefits the children in our schools. A major theme this year was on promoting the role of the school in the community and neighbourhood, especially for disadvantaged groups, which related directly to the problems now being faced by more families. There was a specific reference to this in the director's input and from some of our other speakers. Schools are vital in dealing with these issues, and quality needs investment. Finally, I should point out that's my letter, not my speech, Madam Mayor. Finally, I should point out that for the same reasons and on the same payment basis, there is a similar residential Deputy Heads Conference which is scheduled for the end of November. This one will remain at Eastwood Hall, and plans are already in hand for the 2009 Head Teachers Conference. These two are the only residential conference the Children and Young People's Department runs, and I fully support their continuation. Signed by me on the 31st of October. Now, Madam Mayor, his phrase in the question, recent disclosures, sounds as though this was being hidden. It is not. The conference has been running now for a number of years, and I believe that Councillor Hickson was in the Cabinet for most of those years and has had opportunities at the budget setting in each year to make his comments. For some reason, he has decided to wait until now to raise the matter. Let's look at the next point. A two-day conference in a luxury hotel. Yes, first-class conference hotel was used for this conference, but the conference rate charged by this hotel represents good value for money when compared to other national and regional conferences for the public sector. Any use of the hotel facilities, as I said in my letter to Councillor Hickson, any use by head teachers beyond the conference arrangements were paid for by the head teachers themselves. I do not accept that supporting training conferences for head teachers or any other category of council staff, or councillors for that matter, is an abuse of public funds. The next point is that this has gone down badly with the public at a time of economic downturn. Madam Mayor, I think you ought to know that I have received no adverse comment from any member of the public. I have, however, received comments from head teachers expressing the view that conferences such as this are very valuable, and I shall now read a letter which appeared in the Derby Evening Telegraph last week. Criticism over heads bigoted was the banner headline. How sad to read the ill-informed and bigoted comments from the recent Heads Conference from people who should know better. Derby City Heads residential conferences have been held annually for the last 6 years. Philip Hickson was part of the Conservative and Labour coalition, which was running the council when last year's conference was held, with full council support. Why did he not complain then? This year's City's GCSE results are the best ever, reflecting the positive way schools are working together and sharing good practice in a way unimaginable a few years ago. The annual residential conference plays a key role in underpinning this collaboration. Is it too much to expect that a city councillor might be proud of the success of this city's schools, instead of succumbing to the temptation to make cheap political capital? Councillor Hickson finds an unlikely ally in Dave Wilkinson, whose contribution to education in the city recently has focused on threatening and organising strikes to deny children their right to an education. All schools use a proportion of their annual budget to fund staff development. The cost to schools of a place at this year's conference was no greater than that for many other courses and represents good value for money. I look forward to next year's conference and the chance again to concentrate for 2 days on planning to raise the levels of achievement of our young people away from the bustle of daily school life. I'll not tell you who the head teacher is. You probably know anyway. Now, the overnight stay clearly facilitated the conference, but there is also an ability to attend daily. Head teachers are not forced to stay overnight. The second part of the question suggests alternative spending of the 31,000, not 35. Councillor Hickson deliberately misses the point that the people who paid for the conference are the head teachers from their school training budget, and this is a matter for them and the school governors. Schools have delegated authority to manage their finances, and £335 would have little impact on most schools' budget. It also suggests that the assembly rooms could be made available free of charge. It could not. The management of the assembly rooms is also subject to the budget passed last year, and I've asked for an estimate for a comparable conference from the assembly rooms management, and we have to wait and see how much they will come in. But they are not going to be free, and they're not going to be cheap. The Children and Young People's Department has a negative training budget, and officers plan many training events, some free and some at a fee. They have to cover the costs, which they have done consistently. For this conference, the Children and Young People's Department facilitated the organisation and recouped its costs from the fee, £335. There already was no money, and is no money, for children and young people to direct to any other purpose. The 31,000 is not available to the department. Each school attending contributed £335, and in my opinion, this represents, as I've said before, excellent value for a 2-day overnight residential conference. Madam Mayor, the whole business is mischievous and implies that head teachers should not receive quality training. In my view, especially in a recession, we should be equipping our head teachers and other staff to do their job effectively in a changing world. In the light of the motion coming later, Councillor Hickson seems to face 2 ways at once. He will ask the Council to support training for councillors, but not for teachers. Finally, Madam Mayor, I do not and will not agree with Councillor Hickson. Thank you.
Well, Madam Mayor, me thinketh he protests too much in trying to defend the indefensible. The fact is that we're facing severe economic times, and £35,000 directed to pupil activity would have been welcome. And in fact, he selectively quoted outraged, I think, from Littleover in his reading from the Evening Telegraph. What he didn't quote was teacher from a school who said that she couldn't get classroom facilities because she was being deprived from the budget because they couldn't get enough money. And that money would have been better directed to classroom facilities than to anyone else. Now, the point is that I've made to Councillor Allen is that the assembly rooms can be made available at nil cost. All it needs is a report to Cabinet recommending that the assembly rooms be made available for the head teachers at nil cost. Will he bring such a report to Cabinet?
Madam Mayor, what is the question?
Would they use the assembly rooms? Was your question, was it not, Councillor Hickson? No, I'd rather you didn't. Are you prepared to use the assembly rooms? That is the question.
The point that I was trying to make is this. It's within the authority of the Cabinet to agree that the assembly rooms can be used at nil cost.
Yeah.
So will the Cabinet member therefore bring a report to Cabinet recommending that the assembly rooms is available at nil cost for future head teachers' conferences so that head teachers can then use the £35,000 for what it should be used for, pupils?
Right. Well, that's the question, but you were so busy shouting question that you didn't hear it.
Madam Mayor, I'm sure the tape will show there was no question in the first section.
Would you answer the question?
I will answer the question. The question asks, will the Cabinet, or I'm not sure whether it was will I, direct the assembly rooms to provide a free...
No, the point of information, Madam, what I said was, I said, will the Cabinet member for Education, Children's Services, call it what you may, bring a report to Cabinet recommending that the Council agree free use of the assembly rooms for future head teachers' conferences? Can't be simpler than that, and that's the third time.
Will you?
It's not the third time, it's the second time, and it changes each time it appears. And it was only phrased with the prompt of colleagues from my right over here. The answer, very quickly, Madam Mayor, is no, I will not, because it will open the floodgates to every other body in the City Council saying we want the assembly rooms free, it's our council, it's our assembly rooms. Where do we stop? The assembly rooms management is subject to a budget, and the way to debate that is through the budget process, and we'll have to put, if we want free accommodation in the assembly rooms for council departments of whatever shade or activity, it has to go into the budget. Somebody somewhere has to pay for it. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Grimmadale to Councillor Nater, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Nater. Why is the start date of Chetherston Library being pushed back, and why cannot a start be made on the site either this financial year or at the latest during the next financial year?
Good evening, Councillor Grimmadale.
That is how you ask a question, everybody.
Here, Madam Mayor, I totally agree with you. Councillor Grimmadale, can I confirm that the start date for the new Chetherston Library has not been pushed back? When Cabinet first identified funding for the new Chetherston Library on 22nd of April 2008, this was based on project envisaged to last around 30 months. From scheme commencement to opening the new library. Work was intended to begin on site around 20 months after the scheme commencement. Scheme commencement was agreed by Cabinet on 28th of October, and I am pleased to report that the work has already begun. Officers have held a scheme inception meeting. A project architect has been identified from within the Council's design services team. Appropriate site surveys have been arranged, and pre-planning negotiations have been initiated. According to the timetable outlined above, work should begin on site around June 2010, enabling the library to open April-May 2011. Between scheme commencement and the start of construction work, officers will be engaged in pre-planning negotiations, scheme design, apply for planning consent, preparation of detailed drawings, tendering for a contractor. The period allowed for this is slightly longer than for the new Micklehove Library, reflecting the additional complexities of the site chosen at Chetherston, but is judged by the design services manager as minimum necessary to fulfil all the requirements of a successful project. Officers have advised me that the project could be subject to some delay, the planning application stage. This is because replacement of Chetherston Library will cause a net loss of public open space, meaning that the Council may need to consent from the Secretary of State to proceed with the project. This would introduce a delay of around 3 to 4 months, meaning the work would begin on site in September, October 2010, and giving an opening date for the library August or September 2011. However, officers are investigating whether it may be possible to argue the loss of space caused by the larger library is offset by the recent demolition of garages on the park following a fire and the imminent demolition of the St John's building. If this argument is accepted, it will enable us to revert to earlier timetable, whereby construction would begin around June 2010. Thank you.
Councillor Grimmadale, supplementary, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wondered if Councillor Nater would like to apologise for the delay to the very, very patient people of Chaddisden. My great concern is the state of the existing Chaddisden Library, and I think this is something that really does need to move forward. So my supplementary question is that we need to keep this date, whether the Councillor Nater would like to apologise to the people of Chaddisden for the delay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Grimmadale, the only thing I can say is that we haven't delayed the commencement date. It's been put back because we were in negotiations regarding other services. We have secured an office for the police, so I'm really, really pleased for people from Chaddisden that they're going to get the library. And quite frankly, I think it's hooray for them, and no apologies offered for waiting. So they've got the additional facilities. Thank you.
Councillor Leamy to Councillor Carr, please.
With your indulgence, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Carr. It has recently been announced that the Cabinet intend to close counter-payment facilities at the Council House. Will the Cabinet member please tell Council how many transactions are carried out over our cash counter, on average every month, and how such a closure can be seen as an improvement to the service this Council provides to the public? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Leeming. No decisions have been taken yet about the cash counter service in the Council House. Cabinet will be considering a report next week on modernisation of the cashier service in the Council House. That report was considered by Scrutiny Management Commission last night. One of the recommendations in the report is to approve in principle the closure of the cashier's counter service from the end of February 2009, subject to ongoing work with customers over the next 3 months to give them support through the transition to alternative payment methods if it suits their individual needs to do so. The intention is still to offer customers the option to pay by cash at 50 PayPoint shops and 24 post offices across the city. So that's 74 opportunities where you can pay in the city, Madam Mayor. We will be talking to our customers who use the cash office over the next 3 months, and we will be asking them to consider alternative payment methods. We will see how this consultation with the customer goes before making a decision. Now, Councillor Leeming, to answer your specific question about transaction volumes, the number of cash transactions over the cash counter each month is approximately 5,000. A further 7,000 customers pay by cheque or debit card. So in total there are approximately 12,000 transactions over the cash counter each month. Madam Mayor, we are confident that this number will reduce significantly over the next 3 months during our consultation with the customers period. And many customers will find the alternative payment options we can offer will be actually more convenient for them. Some of these options include payment through the Council's website, payment over the telephone, one that I've used myself very successfully. More people than ever before have bank accounts which enable them to set up direct debits. And we have recently set up multiple payment dates, which was always an issue before. You could only pay on the first of the month. Now you can pay on 3 dates within the month to make it more convenient for customers. Then, Councillor Leeming, you said if you did decide to close the cash office, how will that be seen as an improvement to the service the Council provides to the public? Extra custom will be passed to post offices and local retailers, which will make them potentially more financially viable and therefore more sustainable for the local communities in these areas. Other methods of payment, Madam Mayor, are safer as they remove the need for people to carry large amounts of cash with the associated risks of losing the cash or having it stolen. Promoting direct debit and PayPoint as alternative payment methods will mean customers do not have to travel to pay their bills to the council, a carbon footprint saving. Direct debit customers that we already have tell us that it is more convenient, easy and a safe way to pay, and it helps them to manage their money better, which in turn helps promote financial inclusion. Cheque-paying customers can still continue, Madam Mayor, to pay this way, either by post or through a letterbox facility in the council house and at their local post office. Customers who currently pay by debit card will be able to pay bills using their debit card at a post office, by telephone or online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And finally, customers who pay by credit card will be able to pay over the telephone or online. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Leeming, do you have a supplementary, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, thank you, Councillor Carr. That was in-depth and very informative. And I'm sure that the few remaining post offices that are open welcome the extra train. Whilst the small businesses of the pay points also welcome the extra trade, in fact, isn't this just another case of farming out council business? Thank you.
Yes, I guess it is, Madam Mayor. That seems to me good news for everybody. We remove a large risk from the council house in terms of having lots of cash all in one place, which is a risk, and local traders get more business.
Councillor Hickson to Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's clearly my job tonight to draw the deficiencies of Councillor Jones's performance to Council, regrettably. Would the Leader of the Council on this occasion like to take the opportunity to apologise to the City Centre management team for the offence caused by her failure to attend the last meeting on the 6th of November without any apology, when City Centre traders wanted to challenge her policy of closing public toilets, and why does she hold business in this city in such contempt?
Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Having made inquiries about exactly which meeting Councillor Hickson was referring to, I think he's referring to the City Centre Management Monthly Retail in the City meeting. This monthly meeting is organised by the City Centre Manager for businesses in the City and is designed to be an operational meeting. It doesn't have a strategic focus. It's held on the first Thursday of every month. Whilst everyone is welcome to attend, it is not expected that any councillor would attend. There is a meeting structure in place where businesses can meet with myself as leader. That's the City Centre Forum. And this was held in October when there was an attendance of only over 70 businesses. I was on the panel. At this meeting, the businesses thanked me for my candidness. And it was as a result of this meeting and a subsequent DCP, that's Derby City Partnership, away day, that the Derby Bites Back campaign was launched through the Evening Telegraph and the partnership. The aim of the retail in the city meetings is for the city centre manager to meet with businesses across the city to discuss retail sales and footfall and to provide them with information about city developments and events and to answer questions. I gather from the city centre manager that there are normally in attendance between about 10 or 20 businesses. The discussion at the last meeting was positive. The main areas of concern at this meeting, I gather, were the lack of signage, lack of promotion for events, smoking enforcement in the Strand area, control of vehicles in pedestrian areas and toilet closures. Since this meeting, businesses have received a copy of the minutes and the city centre manager has taken or is about to take action on all the issues. Councillor Philip Hickson did attend the meeting on the 6th of November, and I believe that your attendance had not been expected, but you were welcomed and offered the opportunity to contribute. I therefore feel that no apology is necessary from me to the city centre management.
Madam Mayor, it's getting to be rather a habit that the Leader of the Council is failing to fulfil her duties as Leader of the Council. And clearly there were a large number of businesses there, important businesses, who wanted to engage with the Leader of the Council about the disastrous policy of toilet closures. And the point is, when will the Leader of the Council start to fully perform the duties of Leader of the Council that she's being paid £36,000 for, in addition to her £10,000 basic allowance?
Councillor Jones, please.
Madam Mayor, as far as city centre management meetings are concerned, there's one scheduled in my diary for next, I think it's Monday, and I will be there. The last city centre management meeting, which was a couple of months back, I was present at that. The meetings that I need to go to, I do, and in addition to that, Madam Mayor, although I don't need to justify myself to anybody, I meet at regular intervals with... In this room, perhaps I should add. There you go. In addition to the meetings that are scheduled that I'm down and due to attend, I have a number of other meetings, either in my office or at other places, in the council, with other partners, with businesses. I've met with various business leaders and will continue to do so to fulfil my duties as leader of this council. I think there's one more thing I would like to add, and that is that Councillor Hickson well knows that he was a Cabinet member, he took an allowance, and there were certain scheduled Cabinet meetings that he did not attend. I've looked, and you didn't attend all the Cabinet meetings, did you, Councillor Hickson? You only attended, let me just check my figures to make sure that they are right. Out of the 25 Cabinet members during the 2 years you were on Cabinet, you attended, I believe, 15. You took an allowance for that too.
Thank you. Councillor Willoughby to Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following the review of play areas, can the Cabinet member please tell Council which play areas are now to be closed and what the cost saving will be to the Council?
Thank you, Councillor Willoughby. Good evening. Madam Mayor, it has been decided to save 6 of the 10 play areas that were originally scheduled for closure. These play areas will be considered for refurbishment under the Council's rolling programme of play area refurbishment over the next few years. The only play areas we are now going to close are Cotton Lane, the Racecourse Northern Play Area site, Craddock Avenue in Spondon, and Sinfin Moor Park, the old play area site. The first 3 of these play areas has been devoid of any play equipment for some time, and only some remedial work to the sites to get rid of concrete bases will be required. The remaining equipment at Sinfin Moor Park will be removed, but the newer play area nearby in the park is being refurbished and expanded this winter, and the site of the old play area is currently being considered for development as a wheeled sports area. In effect, this means only 3 play areas will be closed. Closing all the 10 play areas would have saved £10,000 per year, primarily inspection costs. However, Madam Mayor, the savings from closing the 4 play areas will be minimal, as the only play area with equipment, Sinfin Moor Park, is having its other play area expanded, and so any savings from reduced inspections of play equipment will not happen. The cost will now be absorbed within the overall park's revenue budget. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Willoughby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a supplementary. Why is it that now that the Liberal Democrats are in charge of the council that they're actually closing any play areas at all? I welcome the fact that they've saved 6, but why are they actually closing any play areas, given the fact that during the pre-election campaign, as reminded earlier by the leader of the council, their plan was to actually oppose the Labour plans to close these play areas? And does he not think it was disgusting that the rest of his party applauded the closure of those 4 play areas earlier on this meeting? Thank you.
Councillor Carr.
No, I don't think that's disgusting, Councillor Willoughby. In fact, it wasn't a Labour plan, it was a Labour and Conservative joint plan.
Madam Mayor, point of order, that's not true. That is just not true, Madam Mayor.
No, it's the pantomime season, but that'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Clearly, Councillor Willoughby wasn't listening. As I said, the ones that are closing have de facto been closed for a number of years. There is no equipment on them. All we have done is formalise that position. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you. Councillor Marshall to Councillor Kerr, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Kerr. Since 1995, several authorities have made a permanent number of experimental traffic regulation orders allowing motorcyclists to use bus lanes. Various monitoring and research projects have been carried out to determine the effects of these schemes on both motorcycles and other road users. With more and more people turning to more economical and environmentally friendly forms of transport, and in light of the Council's policy on reducing our carbon footprint and easing traffic congestion, and also the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson's decision to allow motorcycles to use bus lanes in London from 5th of January 2009, in fact, this councillor has had an experimental scheme in operation for a considerable amount of time to assess the impact of motorcyclists using 2 specified bus lanes. When is this experiment going to be concluded, and when can we expect to see all bus lanes in the city being made permanently available for use by motorcyclists? Thank you.
Actually, Councillor Marshall, that wasn't the question that you submitted, was it?
It is. I'm only putting what my officers put. No, I'm just kidding.
So, can we have the question? We've got it here, you know.
The question is, the council has had an experimental scheme in operation for a considerable amount of time to assess the impact of motorcyclists using 2 specified bus lanes. When is this experiment going to be concluded, and when can we expect to see all bus lanes in the city being made permanently available for use by motorcyclists? Thank you.
Councillor Kerr, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Marshall. I'm pleased you could find the right question. The experiment... That's for him to judge.
Just answer the question, please,
The
Councillor Kerr.
experimental orders on the 2 bus lanes, Nottingham Road and Uttoxeter New Road, were made permanent in 2006, which means that on these 2 roads, the bus lanes are formally available for motorcycles. The conclusions of this experiment have not been formalised into a policy for the city, which would need to be agreed before moving forward with extending the use of bus lanes by motorcycles. In practice, not all bus lanes would be appropriate for motorcyclists to use. For example, the Nottingham Road one was very little used and probably due to being quite short, and ones in the city centre may not be deemed appropriate either. It is therefore unlikely that all bus lanes in the city would be made available for motorcycles. The work to formalise a policy is included in the wider pool of projects for consideration in next year's Highways and Transport Work Programme, on which a decision will be taken next March.
Marshall?
No, I don't, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor, finally, Councillor Poulter to Councillor Carr, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was wondering if you were going to get to me. Councillor Carr, can I just ask, in answering this question, that you try not to follow the emerging trend of political posturing and shrieking that's gone on tonight. But the question is, the Market Hall and the Eagle Centre Market are suffering from the economic conditions which are currently prevailing. But this is exacerbated by the dead hand of the council management at the moment. Will the council member tell council what he's going to do to rectify this situation, and will he now consider bringing forward proposals for an arm's-length management organisation for both markets? I hope that's the right question.
Councillor Carr, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It does seem very similar to the one I've got, so I guess that's probably okay. I don't accept Councillor Poulter. It has not been established that the council management of the markets is no longer fit for purpose, or that it constitutes a dead hand. The council has very good relationships with the market traders and holds regular dialogue with the market trader committees. At the meeting of the Eagle Centre traders on the 4th of November, one member raised the prospect of an arm's-length management organisation being created. No support for such a step was apparent from any of the other traders. I am aware that Glasgow has taken such a step recently. However, such a move could only work if management were allowed to invest a significant part of the rent received back into the market. This has never ever happened in Derby, as it would cost the council money. The Conservative group will be able to consider if they are able to put this forward as a fully costed budget proposal for 2009-10. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Poulter?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just say, I think, Councillor Carr, you may have got the wrong end of the stick. I'm not criticising the management and the day-to-day management of the council, because I believe they do an excellent job with what they've got. The dead hand of the council, and in fact they actually produce a revenue for the council of over £1 million. The concern with the situation is in line with the fact that they create this deficit, but in return they've received little or no investment to the infrastructure in recent times. You mentioned Glasgow. I can give you much more information about Glasgow, how they have managed to do this through an arm's length organisation while still contributing to the council's revenue budget. In addition to this, Councillor Carr, there are opportunities within the city to consolidate and redevelop a number of market sites around the city.
Can we have a question,
the wholesale
please?
And the livestock markets. The question is, in the circumstances, will the Cabinet member not agree to a review of the market management of the city and its facilities, and include in this a feasibility study on the viability of establishing an arm's length management organisation to take our markets forwards?
The answer to that question is we are continually reviewing with the markets the situation. As I've already said, there is a worrying level of voids in the market, and we are currently looking at ways we can do, things we can do to remove that problem. I am not prepared to consider a review looking forward towards an ALMO. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. That concludes questions to Cabinet members. It's just taken 2 hours. Right. So on item 9, to consider the minutes and recommendations of the Council dated 30th of September and also 28th of October. 10508. Councillor Jones first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The revenue budget strategy is an important piece of budget management process that needs to go through as part of the forthcoming budget setting pattern of things. As part of that process, the Council Cabinet always look at the corporate priorities. The corporate priorities do run for a 3-year period, but they are traditionally at least looked at, if not refreshed, every year. The Liberal Democrat Cabinet worked with officers in the summer to do just that. We looked at the priorities currently before us that we'd inherited from the Labour and Tory administration and decided that they definitely needed refreshing. These priorities put direction of travel for the Council. They are the peg on which we hang our budget setting and performance monitoring work. They're therefore quite key. We did at that stage, once we'd had this exercise with officers and looked at the priorities, we did talk to the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, and he publicly went on record saying that they had absolutely no interest in discussing anything with the Liberal Democrats at all on the priorities. The Labour group didn't wish to pursue the matter either. So there was an opportunity to have a discussion, but you chose not to take that up. That's a matter for you. We carried on with the process because it is right and proper that we have something on which to consult. The consultation papers went out. It's part of the point of panel, as is normal, and we're awaiting the results back of that. But at the moment, we're here to look at whether the priorities that we have got are going to be the ones adopted. And I want to take this opportunity to just tell the public what the priorities are and what the outcomes are hanging underneath them. Because if you look at them, I would have thought they're something that most members of this council can actually support. There are 6 priorities. Priority number 1, and again, I don't think these are in any particular order, but anyway, priority number 1 is supporting our neighbourhoods. Now, this is something that, because we're all part of a neighbourhood, I would have thought that every single member in this chamber would want to sign up to. Underneath that, the outcomes are, amongst other things, reducing the fear and levels of crime and antisocial behaviour. Again, I can't see what problem members will have with that. Surely the level of crime on our streets is something that we want to address. Surely in the light of recent events, that's something we want to look at. We've also got down improving community cohesion and engagement. Again, that's something that we've seen probably wobble a bit in the last week, but thankfully I can report from the meeting today that it does seem to be holding together. But again, it's an outcome that I would have thought every single member in this chamber would want to sign up to. Apart from that, we have got a desire to increase the standard range of affordable housing, to improve facilities and services in our neighbourhoods. None of those can I see a problem with. The second priority is creating a sustainable economy for Derby. We have been beset by media coverage of the economic downturn in recent weeks. We need to have a think about that in the light of the things that we're hearing in the media. We are in a recession position, and surely Derby should be wanting to create a sustainable economy. We want to support economic development. That's one of the outcomes. We want to improve access to and within the city. We want to improve the quality and range of leisure, business and cultural facilities. We want to raise accessibility to job opportunities in the city. I don't think there's one of those outcomes that members in this chamber couldn't agree with. Number 3, protecting and improving Derby's environment. Environmental challenges are something, as I already mentioned in our top 10 manifesto pledges, it's a challenge that faces every single one of us. The former leader of the council was keen to champion that agenda. The aspirations under that are talking about reduction of carbon emission levels and pollutants, tackling climate change and supporting local people to address local environmental issues, seeking to integrate the built-in heritage within new developments and creating greener and cleaner environments and improving the quality of open spaces across the city. Again, I would say to members, surely that's something that you would want to sign up to. The fourth one is raising aspirations and achievements across all ages. This is talking about narrowing the gap in educational attainment. That's one of the outcomes. And the other one is improving skills and achievement of all ages. That ties in with the one just above it on economy, because we need to make sure that the people that are leaving education in the next few years are equipped for the workplace that they are going to face when they come out of full-time education and training. We need to do a service to our citizens of Derby, and again, surely it's something that every single member of this council can sign up to. The fifth priority is improving health and supporting us all to be active and independent. Promoting independence and increasing choice and the quality of services for vulnerable older people. Improving the health and well-being of our communities. Safeguarding vulnerable members of the community. 3 outcomes hanging under that are again something that I wouldn't have anticipated any one of the councillors in this chamber could object to. Surely it's beholden on us all to look after those that are vulnerable, young, in our communities. We should be promoting better lifestyles, and that's an outcome that's there underneath that priority. And finally, the 6th outcome is delivering quality and cost-effective services. We need to continually modernise our services and infrastructure. We need to increase customer satisfaction. That's what we're here for. That's what we should be striving as a council to do. And as part of that, we should be continually reviewing costs of services and improving them and getting value for money. Again, those are the 2 outcomes underneath that priority. I can't see that there's anything wrong with that. I see that it does show vision, it does show direction for Derby. I think that these priorities are a good thing for Derby. It is good to refresh where we're at. And therefore, I would say to the people of Derby that if they're turned down today because the
colleagues to my left and my right don't like them, I would ask them to question why they have elected those councillors in the first place, because clearly they do not have the best interests of Derby at heart.
Councillor Hickson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, we told the Leader of the Council she was going to be in trouble if she had the temerity to bring these proposals to Council, and now she's going to be. We said at the Scrutiny Management Commission that we weren't going to accept the revised corporate priorities, and in fact she missed one out, because on the paper that was put to the Scrutiny Management Commission it also said, and she didn't mention it just in her contribution, that the corporate priorities were also to include the Liberal Democrat manifesto commitments, which is why we asked what they were, because at that meeting none of the Scrutiny Management Commission members knew what they were, and the two Liberal Democrat members just sat there bemused. They didn't even know what a manifesto was, let alone what the commitments were that were underpinning it. And the chairman of the Scrutiny Management Commission asked them on several occasions to elucidate to the Scrutiny Management Commission what these Liberal Democrat commitments were that they wanted us to include in the Council's priorities, and they just looked at him blankly and said, well, we don't know. So it really is a nonsense if the Leader of the Council is going to put two of the most junior members of this Council onto the Scrutiny Management Commission to try and get through a proposal about the most important document that the Council is likely to see in the lead up to the budget setting process. And we've been very open and frank. I think we've said we're not going to accept any council priorities that include Liberal Democrat manifesto commitments. I don't know what the Labour group are going to do, but no doubt you'll hear from them in due course. But certainly this Conservative group is not going to accept any council priorities that include Liberal Democrat manifesto commitments. And furthermore, I've made it clear on a number of occasions that we are not going to accept any budgetary proposals that include the closure of public conveniences in this city. And this is the vehicle now where these pigeons, as far as the Liberal Democrats are concerned, will come home to roost, because I'm going to move an amendment. It's a matter for Council, Madam Mayor, whether or not the Council accepts any revised priorities. And Council will have to vote on that in a moment, in due course. And it's a matter for this Council whether or not the budgetary position that underpins that allows for the closure of public toilets. We've said no to both, and I'm therefore going to formally now, Michael Foot will read out this amendment to put those matters right.
The amendment, Madam Mayor, consists of the revision of the resolution there under 10508, so that it would read as follows: to recommend Council to approve the revenue budget strategy, subject to provision being made for the retention of all public conveniences, including those scheduled for closure, and to substitute the existing corporate priorities for the ones proposed.
Is there a seconder, please? Thank you.
Well, I'm obliged to Councillor Williamson for seconding that amendment. The amendment, Madam Mayor, is sensible. It reverts the Council to the existing priorities that were properly set at the beginning of this fiscal year and had the agreement of the majority of members of this Council, and it reinstates the position of public toilets in this city. And I think that's what the public have told us. And no doubt the Labour group will tell us in due course about how many signatures they've got on their petition, including mine, and no doubt many others from this Conservative group and from large numbers of people across this city who are hostilely opposed to closures of public convenience. We're not going to tolerate it. This amendment, if approved, will not allow the Council's corporate priorities to be altered and will reinstate the funding position as far as public toilets are concerned. In terms of any other budgetary proposals that the Liberal Democrats might bring to this Council, of course we'll look at those in due course. But I warn them now that I would find it very difficult to approve any budgetary proposals on this ridiculous list that was flourished in front of us this evening. But we'll come back to that at a later date. I think it suffices at this moment in time to say that we are not prepared to alter the council's priorities and that we are not prepared to stand by and see public toilets closed. And this amendment, I think, will ensure that.
Councillor Williamson, do you want to speak at this moment? Or?
Yeah, I think I will, Madam Mayor. Thank you. And obviously, by seconding the motion, I've made my group's position very clear that we will have no truck whatsoever with the amendments that are being proposed by the Liberal Democrats to the corporate priorities. The corporate priorities that are currently in existence are still fit for purpose. They are the corporate priorities that were agreed relatively recently and will run through to 2011, I believe. And those are the corporate priorities upon which the policies of this council should be based. And it's patently clear to me, Madam Mayor, that since the Liberal Democrats have been in control of this council, they've been flagrantly disregarding the corporate priorities of this council with their proposals to close public toilets, to hike massive charges on people attending daycare, quadrupling the charges, imposing charges for home care services, sacking litter wardens, and the list goes on, closing a care home when they themselves campaigned against a similar proposal put forward by the previous administration, only to come to power and propose the closure of a different home. And then we had the spectacle of Councillor Frank Harwood writing in the Derby Evening Telegraph, unaware of his own group's position, stating that there was no truth whatsoever in the suggestion that the Liberal Democrats were going to close a care home. And yet the Derby Evening Telegraph itself actually covered the fact they were closing a home only a few weeks prior to that. Clearly, Madam Mayor, I think it is important that we do agree this amendment this evening. I have here, Madam Mayor, going on for 11,000 signatures on a petition. It's pretty much unprecedented that nearly 11,000 people, Madam Mayor, in a space of 4 weeks have signed up. And at times, Madam Mayor, when we were collecting these signatures, people were queuing 4, 5 and 6 deep in order to demonstrate their opposition to this crazy proposal that the Liberal Democrats have put forward. And interestingly, Madam Mayor, the 10,000th signature on this petition is by Richard Felix, the man who many people will know is famous, amongst other things, for his ghost walks around the city. And his concern was that the Liberal Democrats' proposal to close these public toilets would actually potentially make this end of the city a ghost town. And Madam Mayor, I actually also wrote to all the businesses in the Cathedral Quarter as well. And I've had a selection of responses here, all of which are saying to close the public toilets in the Cathedral Quarter will have an extremely damaging impact on their business prospects. We know that footfall diminished when the Westfield Centre opened. The Cathedral Quarter is now beginning to recover, as we predicted that it would, but they can't afford a second blow like this. So not only is this proposition that the Liberal Democrats are putting forward discriminating against the people who need to use public toilets, like disabled people, like families with young children, like many elderly people, many of whom, when they've signed our petition, have said they plan their journey into and around this city based upon the location of the public toilets. Now, how on earth, then, Councillor Jones can stand there and say that they are concerned about vulnerable people in this city when she's prepared to take such discriminatory action against vulnerable people is kind of beyond belief, Madam Mayor. We do have a motion down later on the agenda as well, and I think it nevertheless is important, though, that we state our position very clearly at this stage. The people of this city have spoken as well, and I understand that, and Councillor Jones may correct me if I'm wrong, that she has said that irrespective of what council say tonight, and seemingly irrespective of what more than nearly 11,000 people have said, these public toilet closures, she wants to proceed with them. And I also understand that Councillor Nater, the man responsible for the closure programme, was overheard saying that he didn't care if every single person in this city signed a petition against closure. He was going to close the public toilets. Madam Mayor, that smacks of quite appalling arrogance. And I think Councillor Jones summed it up when she said, I'm not accountable to anybody, is what she said here tonight. And it's quite clear that's what they believe. But, Madam Mayor, I would urge Council to overwhelmingly support this amendment this evening, and let us move on to the next business.
Councillor Jennings, please, on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to point out the fact that Councillor Jones was quite correct when I stated that I didn't want to talk to the Liberal Democrats about anything, and neither did my group. And that was our stated position. However, at a recent SMC meeting, the leaders of the groups were asked by Councillor Graves to meet with the council leader to discuss a way forward on the budget. We attended that meeting on the 6th of November this year. We gave up an afternoon to attend that meeting. Councillor Jones's leadership skills, I'm afraid, were very severely in question. We sat there for at least 30 minutes. That's how long the short meeting was about next year's budget. And how many words did she say about next year's budget in that 30 minutes? Not one. We were there for a meeting about next year's budget. We'd given her our stated position. She had a chance to negotiate a way forward, and she said not one word. That is a disgrace. That is leadership at its best. That is why we don't want to talk to you.
Councillor Bayliss, I've got you on the list. Was that on the substantive or the... No, we're on the amended motion.
Substantive, please, Madam Mayor. I would like to speak later.
Right, thank you. So it's Councillor Jones then, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I presume Councillor Jennings, let's deal with that first, was talking about the meeting that we had in my office a week or so ago. And that was an opportunity for you to come along and talk and listen to what officers had got to say about the budget. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. How do you think I knew that you were going to turn the corporate priorities down?
Point of order, Madam Mayor. We'd actually had a pre-meeting 2 days before with the Chief Executive of the Council, who had informed us that this was a budget meeting, that we were there to move the city forward and try and agree a way forward on the budget. We gave our stated position so that the leader of the council knew in advance where we were coming from, and she never said one word about the budget. So I'm not wrong, Councillor Jones. You are quite wrong in your stated position, and your leadership skills are zero.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There were a few people at that meeting, and I think your recollection is incorrect. Looking at the
Point of
priorities...
order, Madam Mayor. I can concur with Councillor Jennings.
Well, you would. You're still in alliance, aren't you?
Account of the meeting.
This is my meeting, and it's a council chamber, not a sixth form debating society. So,
well, maybe the members here would
Could we
like
have
to
some
treat
respect,
it.
please?
And perhaps they ought to have some respect too, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Looking at what's before us now, the priorities, and I just wanted to draw the attention to those unfortunate enough to have nothing better to do but listen on the internet. If you look at the existing corporate priority number 1, it says making us proud of our neighbourhoods.
Excuse me, Councillor. Is that you sure it's a point of order?
Madam Mayor, I take that comment with absolute, I don't know, disgrace probably tonight.
Where's your sense of humour then?
People listening to the internet are hoping to hear proper debate, not screeching.
Right,
I'm
thank
probably
you.
doing that now.
Right, thank you.
But people are listening.
Yeah, that's thank you.
Can I finish, Madam Mayor?
Yes. Well,
thank you very much.
If it's long as it's a point of order.
It is a point of order. For the people that are listening to the internet, I think they're listening because they're interested in what's going on in the city, not because they've got nothing else to do. I find that remark quite disrespectful.
Right, thank you. Councillor Jones, thank you.
Thank you. The current first corporate priority says making us proud of our neighbourhoods. The new suggested priority says supporting our neighbourhoods.
perhaps the people out there would like to play spot the difference. Creating a 21st century city centre, and we've changed that in light of the economic times to creating a sustainable economy for Derby. The whole of the city is important. Leading Derby towards a better environment is the third one. Protecting and improving Derby's environment is the priority that's been proposed tonight. Again, it's an improvement on wording. The fourth one is supporting everyone in learning and achieving. We've put down raising aspirations and achievement across all ages. The fifth one is helping us all to be healthy and active. Ours is improving health and supporting us all to be active and independent. The sixth one is giving you excellent services and value for money. The sixth one on the proposed list is delivering quality and cost-effective services. The direction of travel is still very similar. Some of the outcomes may be slightly different because time has moved on and there are things that the government wishes to do which need to be reflected in the new revised, refreshed corporate priorities. The language is probably easier to understand in ours than in the former ones. I still think we're just playing around with words. And you... What? Why? I mean, I want to put my stamp on this authority. So, I mean... and they need updating. And, I mean... Well, I don't know. I seem to remember several councils ago, a while ago, Councillor Roberts said, watch and learn. I spent the last 7.5 years watching and learning, and you have the audacity to accuse me of arrogance. I wonder where I learnt that from.
That'll do, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, I've got 6 further speakers on the amendment. I'm not going to take any more, so on the amendment, that is. So we have Councillor Berry now, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I'd like to pick up on a few things. I fully back this amendment tonight, and I'd like to particularly talk about what the leader of the council said earlier on in her wish list earlier on, Pledge E, to give local people a say in decisions. Well, it just so happens that I'm the council for Spondon Ward, where 2 toilets are being closed. And one of the toilets being closed is in Sitwell Street, and no consultation whatsoever was made with the Spondon Community Association as to the alternative use of Spondon Village Hall as a toilet. And I'd like to read out from a letter from the David Hayes, who is a trustee for Spondon Community Association, which just reiterates what I said. No consultation took place with the Community Association as tenants of the hall about the feasibility of the suggestion, in other words, to use the hall as an alternative toilet. The lease only provides for the use of the hall by council for the purpose of statutory elections. Other usage has to be negotiated. If they had talked to the Spondon Community Association, they would have found out quite simply that it is not possible to allow the general public access to the toilet, because when the facilities are let, there is no direct access to the toilet, and members of the general public would have to go through hired rooms. This is unacceptable because of the intrusion on the hirers' activities. Many of the lettings involve the use of events used by babies and young children. And to reiterate something, if they had really asked about it to start with, they would have found out they wouldn't be able to use them. However, following the publication of the report to the Cabinet and a statement in the Derby Evening Telegraph that the Village Hall toilets could be used by the general public, an incident was reported to the police concerning a person entering the hall to use the toilet because of this misinformation, while it was being used by young children's dance group. The incident involved both physical and verbal use of a helper, and of course it involved the police. This is exactly what happens when there's no consultation takes place. What I would also like to say is another email from a local constituent which is excellent. She's done her homework. And what she says is to consider closing public toilets in any part of Derby, especially local areas such as Spondon, Chellaston and Alveston, which do not have larger shops and supermarkets with accessible toilets, is unacceptable. To consider doing so without even consulting the public, which is my point, is clearly against the best interests of those people the council are supposed to represent. I hope that common sense will prevail and public feeling be taken into consideration when the council further discuss this issue, and closure of the public toilets throughout Derby will be stopped. Thank you.
Councillor Willoughby, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Like Councillor Berry, I'm very concerned about the impact of these planned toilet closures, and I think it's very important that we actually nip them in the bud now while we can, because he's talked about his own ward in Spondon. In the ward in Allestree, I've already seen the toilets at the Park Farm Centre. They're now closing at 4 o'clock on weekdays and at midday on Saturdays, when there's still a considerable amount of shopping to do. And what are people who actually want, particularly a lot of the elderly people in Allestree, what are people actually going to do if they need to go to the toilet? And I think that we need to look at the consequences of this, particularly on those people with young children like myself and the elderly, because closing public toilets, if people, for want of a better word, get taken short, where are they actually going to go? To the toilet, particularly a young child who you know, forgive me being graphic here, but I think we need to spell out the consequences of this decision. The child who cannot actually hold on to go to the toilet, they're going to go in the street, and we could end up getting our city stinking of urine. And I don't know about you, my fellow members, but I don't want to live in a city like that. Neither do I even want to be a city councillor in a city like that, and I'm sure a self-respecting person like you, Madam Mayor, would not want to be a mayor of a city like that. And so I think it's important that we support this amendment, we get rid of these planned closures, and I'd like to finally say to Councillor Banwaite, unfortunately I didn't see you with your petition, but unlike some others in sitting in the middle of this chamber, if I'd have seen you, I would unreservedly have signed and supported this petition. I will come after the meeting and sign it then. But basically, I appeal to the Liberal Democrat administration to change their mind on this, as we did on a motion that I brought opposing the closure of the animal enclosure at Allestree Park. Let's have given the amount of people who've signed that petition, let's have cross-party consent on this and show the people of Derby that we really listen to them and we really care about their views. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hussain, please.
Madam Mayor, I think I'll pick up the theme from where Councillor Willoughby has left it off, and that is by asking Lib Dems to reconsider. You'll have to. Can you just? So,
zoom in a bit.
I'll ask Lib Dems to reconsider the proposed action on the toilets which they intend to take. And I do it for 2 or 3 different reasons. The first one is that public services are generally regarded as a good yardstick to measure how civilized a particular society is at any given time. And when it comes to toilet facilities, I think it's even a more sophisticated measure to let you know how people with vulnerabilities are regarded in a particular society. I have to say, generally the priorities, Council Leader, Councillor Jones, has admitted that they are tinkering around with the words, and that the thrust of our priority is same as what they're now proposing, but they want to get the ownership of a document of which they're not the authors, and we are. And I think that is actually a bit of a deceit, if you like, and I don't think they should be attempting to do that. The other reason is they've got priority 5, improving health and supporting all to be active and independent. But if you look at the action which they are proposing to take, that travels in the opposite direction. How will you increase the well-being or sense of well-being amongst older people if you are closing down toilets? How will you make them feel safer? They can make a planned shopping trip in the city of Derby. If they need to use a toilet, there might not be one accessible. And that, in every sense that you think about what they're doing, the council priority is to increase independence, to create more facilities for people who are slightly older, or maybe even younger people, because toilets are not only used by people with disability, they're used by everybody, but in particular, younger children. When they accompany their mums and dads and they come to town, they sometimes, and those of you who've got children, and I'm surprised that, most of you will have children, children give you about 3 minutes notice, if that, to say, I want to go to loo. And if your next toilet is the railway station, councillor, do you think most children will be able to make it to the facility there? I have got various copies of letters which have appeared in the Evening Telegraph over the last couple of months. And I have to say, I've rarely seen a response in the Telegraph of this magnitude. People are still writing in. This is 8 or 10 weeks after the issue was first raised. And I've not seen a single letter which seeks to support the proposals which they put forward. There is an excellent letter, and I'm going to paraphrase bits from it, which was written by Katie Pugh, who is the Chief Executive of Derby and Derbyshire Aid Concern. And I'm just going to read you an extract from it. Not making adequate provision, toilet provision, shows an exceptional lack of care and thought on part of the local authority for the needs of its older constituents. It also contradicts strategic planning for health and social care services that aim to promote independence. There is no point in older people having a wide range of services available if they can't use them because of lack of public toilets. The impact of closing public toilets stretches beyond the needs of older people and will be felt by everyone. Now, can anybody in the reasonable mind disagree with that? Then she poses a challenge for the council, says, Aid Concern Derby and Derbyshire calls on Derby City Council to take the lead by making public toilets a much higher priority than is its counterparts elsewhere in Britain. And I think we need to take up our challenge and send a clear message that we're not going to follow the rest of the trends elsewhere. We will make a mark here. Toilets, facilities will be increased and made better and not shut down. And I have no problem supporting the amendment which has been proposed by Councillor Hickson. Just one last word.
No, I'm sorry. No, you had your time. Right.
Point of information, Madam Mayor. Just point of information. There was one letter of support in the Telegraph for the closure of the toilets, and that actually came from Councillor Frank Harwood.
Councillor Skelton, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to draw Council members' attention to Appendix 3 of Item 9A. And if you haven't turned to it, turn to it. If you please, that is. You don't have to. But it might benefit you if you do. On number 5, it talks about improving health and supporting all of us to be active and independent. Now, the three outcomes have been updated. And the reason they've been updated is that national policy has moved on from where it was. For example, the advent now of individual budgets. With Council now is starting to make progress on the implementation of individual budgets. For those who don't quite understand what that is, it's where people who are entitled to social care from the Council, instead of, as the first option, receiving the service direct from the Council, they'll receive money in order to purchase the services that they wish. So thus we have, as an authority, a duty to make sure that there is a good choice of services available for people to buy with that money. And this is why in 5.1 we have included...
Point of order, Madam Mayor. What has this got to do with the amendment to the motion, please?
This has everything to do with the amendment to the motion, because you're about to strike out things that actually are current policy that have come from a national, from the government, and we have to do these things.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. How can it be current policy if we haven't agreed? I don't understand that.
It is national policy, Councillor Williamson. National policy, which you ought to be agreeing to, as it's your own government's policy.
It's Council's current policy.
Can you national policy?
Can you let Councillor Skelton continue, please?
And as that is part of national policy, we are therefore including the words increasing choice, because that reflects what we have to do. And also, we have to increase choice of services available. You obviously weren't listening, Councillor Jennings.
Just continue, please. Will everybody be quiet, please, and let Councillor Skelton
also,
continue?
We have put in the safeguarding of vulnerable members of the community. Now, the safeguarding agenda is about the detection and prevention of abuse. And obviously, in view of the recent events in Haringey, I hope and I'm trusting that no council member in this chamber would wish to vote against safeguarding. And I'll be very, very sad if they do. Well, that is a great shame. That is a great shame, because you're putting party politics
can we cut out these
above
private
the welfare
conversations
of children like Child P. I'm afraid you are. It's not stupid, it's very, very serious. So, when you actually compare the new priorities and outcomes to the ones that have existed until now, there is actually very little difference apart from what is necessary to reflect the changes in national policy. Safeguarding obviously becomes more important when you give people a choice of which service provider to go with for delivery of their services. If they employ a personal assistant, for example, there is a whole raft of safeguarding issues that arise from that, as to whether people are CRB checked, etc., etc. And so this agenda is incredibly important.
Point
and
of
I would
order,
be very,
Madam
very
Mayor,
sad
under CP
if
11.
Council decided to throw that out. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Point of order, Madam Mayor, under CP 11. Do we not have a Safeguarding Children's Board currently?
There's at the moment. No, it's not a point of order. There is a constant buzz of conversation while people are speaking. Will you please listen? Listen to whoever it is, whichever party. Please listen. Thank you. Now, Councillor Troop.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Skelton has made one suggestion as to why the amendment is irresponsible. Looking at the first part of it, it concerns the closure of toilets. I think it's unusual for a council strategy to commit the council to an unknown amount of expenditure with money which has no idea where it comes from. And to me that is totally irresponsible to commit the council to expend money that it hasn't got. And that would be a big mistake for this council to commit itself in that way. Regarding the areas of my portfolio, if you look at the housing outcomes, the wording is improving the standard and range of affordable housing. That is exactly the same words as in the current priorities, so there's no change there. Regarding the environmental side, again, it is basically carried through, but we thought that the way that it was worded currently was rather aspirational.
Madam Mayor, on a point of order, this is absolute nonsense that the Council are being told now. The justification for the review of the Council's priorities are laid out on page 9 of document 9A. And that says, finalisation and publication of the local area agreement, the draft sustainable community strategy, the publication of the government's white paper, Liberal Democrat manifesto commitments, and recent consultation responses through the Derby Pointer survey. That was the justification that the controlling group put forward for the review of the priorities. None of those have been mentioned. So everything that Councillor Troop and Councillor Skelton have said are completely irrelevant and not connected with the debate that we should be having on the amendment that I put forward.
Carry on, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'm trying to point out that the wording that we've developed is a progression from where we were. And what I was trying to say about the climate change commitment was that we felt that the wording as it currently is was rather aspirational, and we wanted to change it a little bit to make it more active and more into achievement and doing things.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, but on a point of order, this is an absolute travesty of the business that we're supposed to be discussing today. On page 9 of document 9A, that sets out the grounds that the Liberal Democrats said were the justification for reviewing the Council's priorities. That's what they said, not what we said. That's what they took to Scrutiny Management Committee as the justification. Now, I don't mind the Liberal Democrats bleating on about why they want to change the Council's priorities, but they've got to address themselves to the fundamental reasons that they themselves put down for wanting to make that change, and not one of them yet has done so. So my suggestion, Madam Mayor, with respect, is that you should rule this contribution out of order and that we should move to the vote.
Are you nearly at the end of your contribution?
I think the important point in this is that the changes are fairly minor and that they follow a progression rather than a change which is wholehearted and wholesale. Therefore, I really don't see what Councillor Hickson is complaining about in the changes that he's made.
Madam Mayor, on a point of order, I will tell Councillor Troop exactly what I'm complaining about. The point of order is quite specific and it's covered. Now, I know the constitution of this council, and I can quote it chapter and verse if necessary.
Yeah, well, rather you didn't.
Now, on this point of order, the standing orders of this council.
Are you sure these are really points of order?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor, and I can quote chapter and verse if we need to do so. But the point is that contributions to this amendment must directly address themselves to the underpinning reasons that the Liberal Democrats put down for the review of the Council priorities, which are in paragraph 3.4 of the report to Scrutiny Management Commission. That's what we're discussing, not the fanciful nonsense that we're hearing from Councillor Troop and Councillor Skelton.
Madam Mayor, a point of order is to raise a question whether the proper procedure of Council is being followed as set out in the Council's constitution. There is a provision within that speakers should relate to the point, the issue that is under debate. It doesn't go further than that, and it doesn't say that everything that a member says has to be relevant. If that were the case, you would be in some difficulty, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This amendment has two distinct parts. One is relating to toilets and budget, and I'm sad to say that the majority of the opposition members have concentrated on that aspect. The second part is much more wide-ranging and looks at the strategy of this council and its priorities for the future. And that doesn't just include toilets, that includes everything else that this council does. This is a combined amendment, and therefore both points need to be considered by members before they vote. In terms of budgets and toilets, there are many other points between here and March the 3rd, or whichever it is our council meeting will be on to set the budget, when that issue can be reintroduced. There are also other opportunities when you can look, again, at the priorities, but they will be much more difficult. And you're giving two very different messages. Do we, as a council, think the most important thing that we debate in this chamber is public toilets? Or do we think that social service provision and safeguarding vulnerable adults, that climate change in this city, that the education of our young people and older people, those without jobs, do we consider that our maintenance of our streets and our buildings, do we think all those things also matter? Because those are the issues in the priorities.
On a point
Will you
of
please
order,
sit
on a
down,
point of
Councillor
order,
Hickson?
Madam Mayor.
This is not a point of order.
Will you please sit down?
But on a point
It's
of
as long
order,
as it is a point of
it
order,
is, Madam
Councillor
Mayor,
Hicks.
yes, because the points that Councillor Kerr was raising, as if they were somehow new to the revised council priorities, are not. They're already in the existing priorities that we're seeking to revert to.
Okay. Right. Now, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Holmes, and I did say 6, but apparently you indicated and we didn't see you, so I'm calling you now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be brief and precise. Would Councillor Kerr like to continue?
Haven't you finished yet? Finish what you have to say, please. No more points of order, if possible. And then Councillor Holmes. And then I'm going to move to the vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The day before yesterday, I was at the LGA conference on the credit crunch down in London, and I would recommend members to take advantage of the LGA's conferences. They are very good value. I think it costs £25 for the day conference. And I was also in London for another purpose. There were authoritative speakers, and one of the things that came out, which a number of people said on a number of occasions, is that in this situation, when the economic stability is uncertain, one of the things that we as councils need to do is to review our strategic policies. Now this, in my view, is one of the strategic directions of the council, and it is something that we ought to be reviewing. And one of those that we ought to be reviewing is the point that at the moment says in the current priorities and current outcome as being increasing economic growth and sustainable investment. In the current climate, we will do well to maintain our economic position, let alone to be able to aspire to economic growth. And that is one of the points why we believe that we need to review what we are doing and update what we have in terms of our priorities. There are others as well that I believe we ought to be looking at. We don't only want to have improved facilities in our neighbourhoods, we need to improve our services. Because when the times are hard, it is services that people want, not just facilities. If we have at the moment a priority to raise awareness on climate change, but what we need to do is to tackle it. We have raised awareness.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Point of order, Madam Mayor. How long is Councillor Kerr going to speak for? The clock was reset last time. She's had well over her 5 minutes. Can we be fair on this, please, Madam Mayor?
She has some time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We need a context for now to take through our priorities. It is very different to last year. And I therefore would ask all members of the Council to think of that in two ways. And I would appreciate the last contribution, which I believe is going to be from Councillor Holmes, to suggest that we take this as two separate votes, or the mover of the amendment removes these.
Thank you. Thank you. Your time is up. Your time is up. We really indulged you tonight. So, Councillor Holmes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may, I'd just like to take the Chamber back to the Chamber in 2006. And yes, Councillor Kerr, this is important because you spoke about your concerns over elderly people in this city waiting for buses. The Lib Dems argued for toilet facilities and expressed how important they felt these facilities were. But let's fast forward just 2 months to March the 1st, 2006. Again, in this chamber, the Derby Lib Dems returned to the subject. This time, they conducted a survey of shoppers. The survey, it was explained, raised the lack of toilet facilities. Councillor Winter asked, and I quote, "If one has a urology problem, where does one run to?" What about elderly and disabled, they asked. And again, they raised a serious lack of public toilets as an issue. They warned of serious damage to our city centre trade because of this.
Shocking.
But that was then, and this is now. And what is the difference? Well, I'll tell you. Over the last few years, the Lib Dems have conned the people of this city to get the votes they needed in places like Micklehove, Littlehove, Darley. Everything they did considered votes and popularity above all else. They stand for everything but believe in nothing. They didn't care and still don't care about following through on pledges, promises or commitments. For the Lib Dems, opportunism is the name of the game, but the game is now up. Now they find themselves in power, and in one of the many shameful U-turns they are proposing to close toilet facilities in this city. In doing so, they have betrayed every single elderly and disabled person who voted for them, every person who was taken in by their pathetic charade on this and many other issues. But let me assure those people, the Derby Conservative Group are fighting this on your behalf. We're not afraid of making our position clear and seeing things through no matter what obstacles we face. The Lib Dem administration has the power to reverse their plans, to look again at what they are proposing. I support this amendment and hope that they will listen to the will of this council.
All those in favour of the motion as amended? Of the amendment, I'm sorry. All those in favour of the amendment? Those against?
For 16 against.
The amendment is carried. Thank you. When you're ready, the amendment is carried. Does anybody want to speak on the substantive motion? Councillor Bayliss, I think you need.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Recently, at a community advisory group meeting called regarding the fatal and tragic shooting of Kadeem Blackwood, and I'm sure, Madam Mayor, you'd extend the condolences of this council to his parents and family. We had a discussion about issues relating to the budget. It was raised at that meeting by the acting director of the Community Safety Partnership that some of the budget provision that they were using to disperse those gangs using antisocial behaviour orders, maybe an Al Capone type strategy, if you can't get them for one thing, get them for something else, was under threat. I can confirm that the leader of the council was at that meeting. I'd like to ask a question under CP21, which I can read if you want me to, but I'm sure Mr Foot's got a copy. She did actually speak. She actually said her name was Hilary Jones. She was the leader of the council, and I left after an hour and a half, and she hadn't spoken at that point. But the question is this: can she guarantee to the council that the funding for the Community Safety Partnership for the work that it is doing in conjunction with our partners and police is secure in the next round of budget funding? Thank you.
Councillor Jones, do you answer that?
The budget process is still to be agreed, and as we've seen tonight, I mean, assuming, I'm looking at the alliance that's alive and well across the chamber, the toilets will be put back in. I don't think it beholds me to guarantee anything at all.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I perhaps remind Councillor Jones that the last alliance that was in this council chamber was between the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives. So if it's alive and well, it's not doing very well at all. It needs the doctor, I think. Goodness me, wit and repartee from Councillor Skelton. What a shame you can't hear it, but never mind. You know, I just sometimes wonder that I was quoted earlier on where I was said that the Liberal Democrats should watch and learn. Well, they might well have watched, but they obviously didn't learn very much. They've boxed themselves into an almost impossible situation. Look, you see, not only don't they understand how to debate in open chamber, they scream abuse during points of order when it's the Mayor's prerogative to interpret points of order. And you see, even Faye, the nice one who talks about urology in such glowing terms, is now reduced to screaming and shouting. Well, I can deal with that because I love this kind of thing from people like yourself, very inexperienced but quite well-meaning. But don't worry about it. We'll get there. Councillor Troop went to some lengths to say that we'd got no money, it was all terrible, things were bad, and yet on Monday it was announced that the social services budget was underspent by £500,000. Where on earth are we going to get the money from? Well, I think that if you've got £500,000 underspend, you can actually
Madam Mayor, could I tell Councillor Roberts, could I give Councillor Roberts some information about where that money is going to be spent?
No, you can't.
It's going to be spent on carer services and dementia services. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You know, there's a terrible echo in this chamber. You see, the rules of debate don't mean anything to the Liberal Democrats. It's a rare event, really. You just don't understand. You don't get it, do you, Ruth? 20-odd thousand a year and you just don't get it. Anyway, that's where the money could come from. I'm not saying you should use it for that. I'm just saying, Councillor Troop said, where can it come from? That's where it could come from. And you know, you're sitting here now, hanging yourself up on a semantic argument about changing the objectives of the Council, when really it's all a matter of silly semantics. The objectives are sound. They were sound before. You didn't object to them when they came through. And all this is, my goodness me, are you going to keep on rabbiting away while I'm speaking? You know, are you... No, I'll get paused.
Madam Mayor, I put forward an amendment to the priorities last year.
Be quiet.
Well, I rather thought it was you, Lucy, because when wording is altered meaninglessly, I know that Lucy cares behind it. So I knew it was you. You didn't have to tell me, but thanks very much for telling me who it was. But you've lost sight of what we're about. You've got 10 to 11,000 signatures here from people in this city who want you to change your mind. You won't do it. Why won't you do it? Because you're just closed-minded to what the needs of people are in this city. And, you know, even when you say that you managed at some stage to bring in your pledge to get rid of the parking meters in little over, it had already been done. You weren't pushing very hard, were you? The door had already been opened for you. So there was nothing in that. And I just think that when I hear the leader of the council say, I don't have to justify myself to anybody, that really speaks of the arrogance of someone who wants to be in this chamber and says to the people of this city, I take no notice of what you say. This amendment is fairly simple. It keeps in the statements that we've already got, and it would make sure that the toilets were opened, which is the wish of the people of the city. You ignore the wishes of the people of this city at your peril. And whilst you keep rabbiting away there, Councillor Skelton, very rudely, when you've been asked by the Mayor not to do it, you were the Mayor of this city, not very good one I might say, but you should have learned that the Mayor of this city should have respect from councillors in the chamber, and you shouldn't forget, and you're doing it now, and you're still disobeying what the Mayor asked you to do. I support this amended motion.
Councillor Nater.
Well, I've got to see what I need to.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm quite happy to say, as the new kid on the block, I'm totally disgusted at what I'm looking at tonight. And quite frankly, I'm quite... I've seen the drama. I've seen the drama that goes off here, and that isn't representative of the city and the people of Derby here. And I'm really saddened by what's going on here, and I hope people in the future are listening at what we're trying to do here. I'm just totally disgusted. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And as so many people have talked about toilets, I think maybe I'll now come to the toilets issue. I just want to remind people that about 11 months ago, Labour put together a consultation booklet on their budget for the current year. Within that consultation, there was a line which said that there would be cuts to the public conveniences budget, and that went out to consultation across the city. It was one of many points that were in that document. And I presume that at that time there was no significant comment back from the public in Derby, because if there had been, I'm sure that they would have responded to that by altering their budget plans. But beginning of March, they put forward a budget which was approved by themselves, who at that time were the largest group. The Tories abstained, as I remember. We voted against, because one of the items in that was the cut to the public conveniences budget. It had been consulted on, alongside many other points. I presume, as I say, that there were no significant comments back, and there it was within the Labour budget, which we are now working to. Dave Roberts says that we may have lost sight as to what it is about, but I'm afraid that his group may have actually lost sight as to what they did last year compared to what they are doing now.
Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just three small points, and the first two I'd like to link together. Councillor Roberts talked about closed minds, and I heard Councillor Williamson referring to the unprecedentedness of his petition at the start of this debate. Well, I remember when I first joined this council, we brought a petition of 14,000 names to this council to oppose the closure of the bus station. And the closed minds over there carried on closing it anyway. And the toilets in it, yeah, funnily enough. Sorry. I also, like Councillor Roberts, deplore some of the rudeness that's been around the chamber tonight, and particularly the disrespect for you. I would also like to remind Councillor Roberts that when Councillor Skelton was mayor, he was very often quite rude to her. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That doesn't give anybody an excuse to be rude to me, though. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of points, really, I want to make, and just firstly respond to Councillor Kerr when she claims that this closure programme was a Labour proposition. And the fact is, and I don't know how many times I've got to make this point, Madam Mayor, but I've made it on numerous occasions and it seems I need to make it yet again, it is true that this matter was something that was contemplated, but then it was rejected by this council, in fact, and rejected by the Labour-led cabinet at the time. And all I would merely refer you, Councillor Kerr, to is page 48 of the budget paper that I took to the cabinet in February last year. It's very clear. In response to representations, and we'd already made the decision in any event, actually, following further representations that we'd had in different forums about concerns relating to the closure of public toilets and the implications it would have on particularly older people and disabled people, we'd already taken the view that this wasn't something that we could proceed with. But formally, we responded to the observations that were made by the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, who urged in their response to the budget the Cabinet not to proceed with the closure programme. Now, in the budget paper, Madam Mayor, it's nearly 100 pages long, page 48 stipulates very clearly the Cabinet's response to those particular representations, as it gave its response to a number of representations on other aspects of the budget. And it's very clear, simple. I was going to say in black and white, but it's actually in red and white, actually, for added emphasis. And it simply says the Cabinet response to the Opium Scrutiny Commission's representations was agreed. We agreed that we wouldn't proceed with the closure programme. It's very clear. I've told you on numerous occasions. Go to your budget papers. Flick through page 48, two-thirds of the way down the page. It says it there. I don't know how clearer we could possibly be, or how many more times you need to hear this message. We were not going to close the public toilets in this city. It's very, very clear, Madam Mayor. And let me also, while I'm on my feet, deal with Councillor Carr's comments, because I think there is a very significant difference between the proposals of this administration and the proposals of the administration, the Labour administration at the time to which he was referring, and our response to the representations around the bus station. Because the fact is that the users of the bus station, the overwhelming majority of bus users, wanted to see that drafty building that had become unfit for purpose demolished and replaced with a modern facility that the previous administration brought to fruition. It is now, as we can see, taking shape. And the difference there is we wanted to replace an appalling facility with a much better facility. What you're proposing to do is actually take away a facility and replace it with nothing. You're telling people, well, go in the pub, go in a restaurant, don't bother coming to town, perhaps. It's just an appalling, arrogant position that you're taking on this particular question. And, you know, you are being very stupid, in my view, in actually ignoring not just the wishes of the members in this chamber, but 11,000 people. And I don't know how long, Councillor Carr, it took to reach the 14,000 figure that you quoted. It certainly wasn't in 4 weeks. We got this in 4 weeks. If we'd carried on for the length of time that the bus station petition was running, let me tell you, Councillor Nater's comment that he doesn't care if every single person in this city signed the petition, that he was going to still close the toilets. Well, in that time, we probably would have got 250,000 signatures on this petition. And then you probably still would have ignored it. So, Madam Mayor, I think, you know, Councillor Carr is comparing oranges with apples. It's not appropriate. And as for the remark that we were going to close the public toilets, it is, I mean, I regret to say it in this chamber, Madam Mayor, and perhaps I won't say it's a lie, maybe they're just misguided, but please, look in your budget papers, get your facts right. We were never going to close those public toilets, and we would not close those public toilets, and this motion that we've agreed earlier on will ensure that you can't close them either.
Councillor Hussain.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Williamson has said very clearly a proposal was brought to the Labour Cabinet for consideration, but I think we had a bit more foresight and we could think through the impact of those proposals that might be on ordinary people of this city, and we threw it out. We said, if anything, we actually want to see improvements in the arrangements that are in place, and we would like to see at a later date a more developed proposal which sets out options that are available to us to increase the facilities. And we also talked about extending toilet facilities to shopping districts, like the area which I serve, Arboretum Road, Normanton Road and Petrie Road. Between them do not have a single toilet facility for the public. And some of the shops, as I think Peter was saying earlier or somebody else was, some of the businesses which operate from those district centres are actually quite small, and very few shops have proper facilities to offer to members of the public. But I think what you're trying to do here is you're underestimating the public reaction over this issue. Most people, most older people in particular, find it a bit embarrassing to talk about toileting. And I think as a society, we're still probably a little bit behind times, and we still think it's a matter of laugh and a joke when somebody says, I want to use a loo. Or sometimes people are still a bit embarrassed, even from asking somebody to say, could I go and use your loo? But when you're not buying anything, it's quite obvious people are very embarrassed just to, make a beeline for the toilet, because there have been occasions when somebody will say, well, where are you going? Now, later on, if we are going to have a sensible discussion and that these proposals are being considered, we could come to some arrangement with some shops where they agree with us to say you can place a public toilet sign some distance away from that particular shop, so any person walking can walk into those premises as of right. If those were the sort of proposals that you are going to develop and bring forward, I think we might be quite amenable to considering. But at the end of the day, we want to see a net increase in toilet facilities and not a decrease.
Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to raise just 3 small points because I think there's been a big, long debate, mostly about toilets, unfortunately, because this is about the budget strategy rather than the final budget. One of the points I was going to raise was the bus station, but Councillor Williamson covered that quite adequately and I think made the point on our behalf. The other point I wanted to make was about the alliance. I think Councillor Jones and Councillor Kerr and maybe Councillor Skelton and 1 or 2 others said that there is an alliance between the Conservatives and Labour. That is absolutely untrue, because if it was true, do you think that we would have actually put the Liberal Democrats in control of this city? I mean, that is a real question. Do you think we would have done that? Absolutely not. And
Will you please stop rabbiting?
And I can assure you, we actually put.
Could you pay attention, please, Conservative group?
We actually put an alternative cabinet forward, and your party did not want to associate with that. So there is no alliance between the Conservatives and the Labour, unfortunately, at this stage. The other point that I want to raise is, coming back to the actual document of the Review Budgetary Strategy, you will see that the Scrutiny Management Commission, of which I am the chair, actually put in 3 recommendations. And Councillor Hickson did allude to it earlier in his speech, which was a long time ago now. And number 2 says there should be an urgent meeting of the leaders of the 3 political groups to attempt to agree a cross-party approach to the budget strategy and corporate priorities. That is why we're in this situation tonight. Because as the leader of the council, you were inept at doing that. You should have got these people together to talk and agree a way through this strategy. Because you did not do that, that is why we're in this situation. You cannot allow the officer to do that. In this particular situation, the officers cannot get you out of that problem. You actually need the politicians, the elected members of this city, to agree that. That is why we're in this situation. Now, if you cannot do that, that is why you're in a situation why you've got this motion, amended motion, forward, and you will lose that motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, no more speakers. So, Councillor Jones, would you like to sum up?
Madam Mayor, we've only looked at the first bit. I don't know whether anybody wishes to speak on the 10608 part.
Right, okay. You don't want to? Fine. 10608. At the end. 10608. Anybody wish to speak on it? No, right. Okay. Councillor Jones to move the motion as amended.
Sorry, I'm not switched my mic on. I just want to make sure that nobody wants to speak on that other part of the Cabinet minutes. We have seen, I believe, a monumental U-turn because it was in the budget. There was a line in the budget last year that was voted on by the Labour group to take away revenue income from that area of budget. That is there. I think that's a U-turn. The Cabinet are implementing your budget. No, I don't want to move the motion yet. I've got a right to speak on it. The priorities aspect, you've amended the priorities back to where they were. That, I believe, is a retrograde step for this city, because it is not moving the city forward, as you've both claimed. It is standing still, and when you don't very often stand still, you tend to slip back. I would therefore, as the minutes have been amended, I would like to know from the monitoring officer whether I have to move the motion we've got before us, because clearly this is not the Cabinet's will, and I would like a ruling on that, please.
It has been accepted over time that where Cabinet minutes have been amended by Council, then the Council leader still moves the minutes. They are still the Cabinet minutes, even though they have been amended on being approved by Council. So it is custom and practice for the leader to move them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foote. Well, in that case, I will reluctantly move the minutes.
As amended, is that agreed? All those in favour? As amended? As amended? Yeah, that's carried. It's carried. Thank you very much. Item 10, to consider the minutes and recommendations of the Taxi Licensing and Appeals Committee dated 15th of October. Councillor Redfern. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 11, to consider a report of the Director of Corporate and Adult Services concerning urgent non-executive decisions made by the Chief Executive. All agreed?
Sorry.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I raise an issue here under point 2.3, the constitutional appointments? And I did hear earlier on, in one of the responses, Councillor Skelton made reference to baby P. Now, I happen to think that that is quite an important issue here. And in a council where we have to act in loco parentis for many young children, and where we're talking about foster care, I find it absolutely amazing that what we're talking about in the current climate is to take away from the fostering panel the cabinet member and replace him with Councillor Hurd. And I do not wish to make this any reflection on Councillor Hurd. I think she'd be extremely capable in that role. However, when the eyes of the nation are on the corporate management by councils of children in care and in foster care, I think it's wholly inappropriate for this council to change its relationship with the fostering panel to take away the person with cabinet responsibility. And remember, it's not in the way that it used to be that the council could make decisions. Now the council cabinet member has virtually autonomy in these issues. And I wish to say very clearly that I want to see either this voted down or the ruling authority here, the Liberal Democrats, agree to retain Councillor Allen in that role because of what I consider to be the extremely serious position that we could put ourselves into by, at this time, making a clear diminution in our commitment to the young children who require the protection of this council. And I hope that we can agree to do that tonight, Madam Mayor.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to say, on this occasion, I actually do agree with Councillor Roberts. For a number of years, I sat on the panel as the Cabinet member, and there are decisions that need to be made that do require that level of decision-making ability. And with no disrespect at all to Councillor Hurd, this needs to be the Cabinet member sat there, especially in this climate. And earlier we heard comments from the Liberal Democrats about how we were not protecting our children, and they were saying quite clearly that we weren't. Well, I'm sorry, this is a move that does not have with it the authority of the Cabinet member, and that is really required in this situation. And I'm sure Councillor Bolton, who's also been on this panel, would agree with me that those level of decision-making cannot be made by a non-Cabinet member, and that you require that authority to take with you to that panel. And the knowledge that is required is quite substantive about the workings of the fostering and adoption system. And whilst I'm sure that Councillor Hurd is quite able to learn that, you should know it as part of the job as a Cabinet member, and I'm afraid in this situation I do agree with Councillor Roberts.
Councillor Kerr.
Madam Mayor, I understand that this recommendation, members and Madam Mayor, went forward as a result of guidance that was given from national sources, and it might be helpful if the Director was to give us some advice on that, if we might hear it.
Mr Foote, would you like to give some advice on that?
Certainly the position used to be that the representative on the fostering panel had to be the Cabinet member, and that is why Councillor Williams and Councillor Bolton were representatives on the fostering panel. I am now advised that those regulations have changed, and it doesn't have to be the Cabinet member, but it can be the Cabinet member. On the adoption panel, I am also informed that the situation is, as it has always been, that the Cabinet member cannot sit on the adoption panel. If I could go on from that this report is for noting. These decisions have been made. They've been made by the Chief Executive, having reached agreement with the 3 group party leaders. So they are brought to Council for information. They have never been overturned at Council.
Alan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps I should explain some of the background to this. Yes, I agree with you that the position is an important position with all the safeguarding issues, and we don't need to rehearse the issues around Baby P. We all know how important it is to select fostering parents and review their appointment with great care and scrutiny and all the dedication that can be brought to that role. But I have been advised about the changes in legislation. I took advice on that legislation. I've received advice from our legal officers. I've received advice from the head of service and from the Assistant Director in Children and Young People Service, who is responsible for fostering, all of whom advise that it is now not advisable to have the Cabinet member on the fostering panel. Now, we may need to go back to a further debate on the legalities of this, but the advice was clear at the time that it is now inadvisable for the Cabinet member to sit on the fostering panel. That's the motive behind moving it, and I hope you can accept that motive. It's responsiveness to professional opinion and to the current state of the legislation on the matter. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Baxter, Councillor Higginbottom.
What Councillor Carr just said, can you tell me when the legislation was altered? Because clearly that applied during Councillor Bolton's year of office, and clearly the legislation must have occurred during the past few months, and I have not heard of any alteration to legislation. In fact, I thought the situation was that the Cabinet member had to be on this fostering panel, and I just wondered if our legal advisor could tell us when the legislation came in to alter that.
I can't tell Council that. I haven't got that information. The change clearly occurred from the last time we checked it, I think when Councillor Bolton asked that question, and when we looked at it again. So it has happened sometime in the last couple of years. And it's my advice. I've not looked into it myself. It's my officers who've looked into it.
Councillor Higginbottom.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's my opinion that the advice Mr Foote has just given and the statement that Councillor Allen has just given are conflicting. The advice Mr Foote gave was that the Cabinet member no longer has to be, whereas Councillor Allen is saying that it's best practice for them not to be. I would like clarification as to who's right. I would also like clarification as to whether, just because it's not custom and practice for something to be overturned at full council, is it actually illegal for us to overturn it? Because I actually believe, in light of the current situation, it may be seen to be an abdication of responsibility from a very senior post.
Madam Mayor, I don't think there's any conflict between what Councillor Allen and I said. My view was on what I understand, and I'm informed is the legal position, that the Cabinet member does not need to be on the fostering panel, but he can be. Councillor Allen said that he had received advice that it is not advisable to be on the fostering panel, there is no conflict between those two.
In the papers, under 2.3, in the reason for urgency, it says that the next Planning Control Committee... Oh, sorry, I've got the wrong end of the stick. If I can just... I'll ask a different question. If it's the will of Council that we should uphold our responsibilities in terms of child protection, and it very clearly is that there's a good body of opinion in this room that we should, can we as a council direct the change in the decision of the Chief Executive so that we will instruct the Cabinet member for children and young people to actually undertake the role that we envisage is advisable from our point of view, that he should be there on the fostering panel?
Madam Mayor, I was going to suggest that we do look further into this and look at the advice that Councillor Allen has received, and then come back to the next council meeting to make a final decision on that once that advice is before council. Would that be acceptable?
Can we then, Madam Mayor, ensure that in the interim the status quo would prevail, where Councillor Allen continues in his role on fostering until such time as that advice is clarified?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know it's unusual to speak twice. The point I was going to make was there are a significant number of other people on the fostering panel. That does not take away the weight of a Cabinet member being there. I accept that. But I think Michael Foot's suggestion to move forward is right and proper, that we take a more detailed view of the advice available, and I'm quite prepared for members of other parties to be involved in that if they so wish to be. There is a difficulty with holding the status quo, as Councillor Roberts says, and I can understand his motives for saying that, but the change has already taken place. I have relinquished the position and Councillor Hurd has taken it up. So if we go to status quo, that's Councillor Hurd sitting on the panel. So I suggest that with some urgency we take up Mr Foot's suggestion of having a proper investigation into the legality of all this, involve all three parties with a view to making a very quick resolution so that we can resolve it, maybe with leaders' agreement, but it needs to be resolved quickly, and I'm quite happy to do that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. That sounds like a good idea. But Councillor Hurd would like to speak.
Madam Mayor, I was just going to say something along similar lines about the status quo, as I have already taken over in some respects, and I have got some training coming up next week, so I shall continue with that until I'm told otherwise. Okay, thank you.
Right, well, I think obviously we're not going to take a vote on this. We'll wait till we get further advice on the situation. And in that case, we'll move on to item 12. Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This document allows overview and scrutiny to align themselves with the Derby City Partnership cities as best we can. I have to say this is the result of a great deal of discussion, debate and consideration by all three main parties. So I move the motion that Council approve and adopt the changes to the Council scrutiny structure defined as option 1 in the attached report to the Scrutiny Management Commission meeting on the 29th of September.
Could I have that seconded, please? Councillor Webb.
Can I second that as Vice Chair of Scrutiny Management Commission?
Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 13. Item 13. Councillor Williamson to move. Councillor Roberts to second, please. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, this is a very straightforward motion and a highly sensible, I think, in the present circumstances where we find ourselves with all the three parties with similar numbers of councillors on the authority. The establishment of a city development company is a very important step forward, potentially, for this city. I think in these circumstances where we find ourselves with all three parties with similar numbers, where we have a leader of the council who is very inexperienced, it would be sensible to bring on board more experienced leaders of the other groups who have a better understanding of regeneration in order to ensure that we can keep the city moving forward and keep the CDC on track. And also, I think, keep all parties on board in terms of the role of a CDC should one be established in the city. Now, when this matter came to the Cabinet, I actually made the point that I felt that it was appropriate for all three leaders to be represented, but that was rejected by the Cabinet at the time. It's therefore appeared on the agenda tonight, and I hope that Council will agree the motion as printed, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hickson, did you wish to speak?
Could I formally second, Madam Mayor, and reserve my right to speak? Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just so that everybody understands. I believe when it came to Cabinet, we were talking about a steering group. And as it was a steering group, then at that stage it was felt that there was no need to take up the time of the other two leaders. This motion actually talks about the final CDC, and if that's the wish, and I fully accept that we are split fairly equally three ways, more so after tonight, and therefore I'm quite happy to accept the motion.
Councillor Roberts, did you know? Okay. All those in favour? That's carried then. Thank you very much. Right. Councillor Williamson to move. Councillor Banwaite to second.
Well, Madam Mayor, again, I hope in the spirit of unanimity that's broken out that we can get unanimous agreement on this motion. It does seem to me a highly pertinent and important motion for Council to agree this evening in relation to the national minimum wage. It is now 10 years since the introduction of the national minimum wage, and in spite of all the hysterical utterances of those who were opposed to the introduction of the minimum wage at the time, that it would create unemployment, cause companies to go out of business, we've actually seen a net increase, notwithstanding the increase in unemployment that we've seen in recent times, have been a net increase in the number of people who are employed earners in this country. And of course the other important thing about the national minimum wage is that it's lifted literally millions of people, many of them women workers, out of poverty pay. And I remember doing for the council's, one of the council's poverty profiles, a survey of the jobs that were available in the job centre at that time, admittedly 12 years ago, but nevertheless it still represented a very, very low wage. And there were many jobs on offer at that time, in 1996, prior to the election of a Labour government, of jobs that were paying less than £1 an hour, and many more paying just £1 an hour. And had there not been the minimum wage put onto the statute book, then the millions of workers who are currently enjoying the minimum wage, which admittedly I would like to see higher, would be still on wages of around £2 to £3 an hour. And the grinding poverty that actually creates for people in what is the fourth richest country in the world was a stain on our national character. Thankfully that's been removed, and together with many of the other innovations that the government has brought in relation to child tax credits, in relation to working tax credits, in relation to the Sure Start schemes, affordable childcare and the rest of it, and the increase in the number of jobs that we've seen in this country, obviously a lot of people are in a far better shape now than they were prior to the introduction of the minimum wage around 10 years ago. Having said that, Madam Mayor, there are still a number of unscrupulous employers who operate around the country, and Derby is no exception to that. And I therefore do think it's appropriate, particularly in this 10th year of the national minimum wage, for the City Council to take proactive steps to ensure that workers, vulnerable workers, are protected and that action is taken against unscrupulous employers who do continue to exploit their workforce. As well as that obviously being very damaging to those workers themselves, it has a knock-on impact on the wider economy as well, because clearly if people have got more money in their pocket, then that tends to recirculate, particularly low-paid workers. It tends to recirculate in the local economy. And economists who have studied this will tell you that that is a fact. So by supporting low-paid workers, and particularly by addressing the question of vulnerable workers who are not being paid at the minimum wage, that will not only benefit those individuals, but it will help to support other businesses in this city, because they'll have greater spending power that they will use in this city as well. So there is a kind of economic virtuous circle created there as a consequence of that action being taken. Now, clearly what we're asking for here is a range of different measures, which I won't go through in detail now, Madam Mayor. They're there in the motion. I think they are appropriate, important steps for this local authority to take to ensure that we continue to move the city forward, Councillor Jones, that we continue to look after vulnerable workers in this city. We, I believe, as a public body, the local authority, have a supreme role, really, in that sense, in actually taking steps to protect vulnerable people in our city. And I therefore hope, in the spirit of unanimity, Madam Mayor, that we saw with the previous motion, that everybody around this chamber, even previous doubters, and I know there were doubters certainly on the Conservative benches, but it seems that the Conservative leader and others in the upper echelons of the Conservative Party do now seem to recognise that they made a mistake at the time in actually opposing the minimum wage. And even, people in the Liberal Democrats, where we know that the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, I don't know what the Liberal Democrats' view is here, but certainly in the past we've seen the Liberal Democrat spokesperson in the House of Commons actually opposing an increase in the national minimum wage. And I still don't believe, Madam Mayor, just to make it absolutely clear, the national minimum wage is still adequate. There is still more that we need to do. But the fact is, it's on the statute book, it's there, it's helped millions of workers. There are, however, still several hundred, possibly several thousand workers in this city who aren't even getting that national minimum wage. And it's incumbent on us there, Madam Mayor, to, I think, join together to ensure that the Council can use its combined efforts to ensure that we address any anomalies that exist in Derby for the reasons I've outlined.
Mr. Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to share our views with Councillor Williamson. I entirely agree that the national minimum wage has not proved the disaster that doomsayers did predict. And we should all support the fact that it has moved many from slave labour wages that caused such misery. However, I do believe that this motion does not go far enough and can be improved, and I therefore wish to move an amendment.
Madam Mayor, on a point of order, before Councillor Carr moves his amendment, my motion hasn't formally or otherwise been seconded.
Sorry, mate.
Councillor Banwaite.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have here in my hand a booklet produced by USDOR, and it's called What's the Labour Government Ever Done for Us? Now, you might think, well, I should know all these policies off by heart. But when this government's achieved so much, I think it's important actually to remind people, and especially when the media, unfortunately, through their stories, do actually pollute people's mind with some mistruths about what this government has done. I'd just like to sort of point on there, and I'd like to sort of say, if anybody would like to get hold of this, and certainly those looking on the internet tonight, it's an excellent publication produced by USDOR. I thoroughly recommend it. There is a section here in reference, and I've just lost it for a moment. Section 2, rights for people at work. Protection against unfair dismissal, a Labour policy. Equality for part-time workers, a Labour policy. Breaks and rest at work, a Labour policy. Trade union protection, a Labour policy. Holidays, right to paid leave of 24 days a year, Labour policy. Madam Mayor, these policies have transformed the lives of millions of hard-working people in this country. And Councillor Williamson has already eloquently covered the sort of key points of those benefits. But I think it's also important to actually look at the Conservative record on this. And I'm sure they'll be speaking on this, and I don't want to steal their thunder too much. Now, I'm trying to anticipate potentially what they might say. They may support it. I think given the current Conservative refashioning and rebirth, as they call it, they like to present this very much a caring Conservative party. And they also like to say, well, when you talk about this and you talk about that, these are all Thatcher's policies. And we've distanced ourselves from Margaret Thatcher. She was cruel, she made mistakes, she virtually bankrupted the country, it was in a complete mess. There was rioting, they were rioting on our streets in places like Brixton and Tottenham. The police were totally out of touch under a Tory government. Well, we've got nothing to do with those era. We distance ourselves. We're under a new leader. He's young, he's dynamic, he's from Eton. Or was it, I can't remember which public school he's from now. We're a new Conservative party. Madam Mayor, let's get one fact quite clear. David Cameron opposed the national minimum wage. The modern Conservative party, the very people now that want to vie to be the leaders of this country, oppose the national minimum wage. And as Councillor Williamson's put, what have they actually opposed? They've opposed supporting and benefiting the rights of workers. Madam Mayor, 2010 is going to be a very important year. There are local elections and potentially a general election. Conservative politicians up and down the country, and obviously in Derby, are going to be asking for your vote. But let's make it quite clear, the national minimum wage is very symbolic. It establishes a clear difference, a clear differential between ourselves and the Tory party. And that is, Madam Mayor, we stand for the rights of workers across Britain. And they've shown through sheer political opportunism, and I have to say, certainly some of the members they've recently taken on, that all they're interested in is shaping and remodelling themselves to win votes. And Madam Mayor, you cannot trust that party in government, nor can you trust them in Derby, to run Derby City Council. Thank you.
Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would you like to read the amendment, Mr. Foote?
Yes, the amendment, Madam Mayor, consists of the addition of words into the 5th paragraph of the motion. And with the added words, that paragraph would read, Council therefore calls on the Council Cabinet, in partnership with the Department for Work and Pensions, Derby City Partnership, Job Centre Plus, the CLAC, Eastern European Migrants Committee, and subject to adequate budget provision.
Two.
Yeah. That was all.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you, sir.
Has a seconder for that, please?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Thank you. Right.
The national minimum wage is an important cornerstone of our national strategy, aimed at providing employees with decent minimum standards and fairness in the workplace. It helps businesses by ensuring companies compete on the basis of quality of the goods and services they provide, and not on low prices based predominantly on low rates of pay. Madam Mayor, since 1997 the UK labour market, as Councillor Williamson said, 10 years, has been based on combining social justice with economic prosperity, so that businesses can grow and employment expand, delivering opportunity for all. In particular, we need a stable and proportionate regulatory framework, one in which complying with the law is simple and straightforward, and where individuals get the rights to which they are entitled, supported by an effective enforcement and penalties regime. And I believe new legislation will be coming through for implementing in April next year. A new strategy to deal with cases of underpayment of the national minimum wage, based on a fairer way of dealing with arrears and a simpler, more effective compliance regime to deter non-compliance, is proposed. we need to ensure that the penalties regime for offences committed against the rules is enforced. To do this, we need better intelligence from our partners so that our enforcement staff can focus these efforts more efficiently. This will make it much more difficult for the small minority of rogue agencies to cut corners at the expense of the reputable side of industry. This amendment strengthens the motion to ensure that we do embrace partners to support us and also that we provide adequate resources to do this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp, did you want to speak now or do you want to reserve?
Yes, I'll just say a few words, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Carr has made it clear that we support the general thrust of this. What I'd like to say is not to pour cold water on it, but just to face up to the realities of the situation that we're in, which is perhaps something that has been a bit lacking in this chamber tonight. The trading standards officers in the council have currently no statutory powers to in this area of the minimum wage, and at the same time trading standards officers are rather under-resourced and find it difficult to cope with their existing statutory powers. So while they would obviously do their best in this area, their ability to make much achievement on it may be rather limited. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Williamson.
Well, Madam Mayor, I welcome Councillor Carr's amendment, much of it anyway. The only bit I'm a little bit dubious about is the last part where he talked about subject to budget availability, I think was the words that he used. However, I think we can address that in the budget process and ensure that funding is made available. I don't actually accept the point, however, that Councillor Troop made, because it's about priorities in the end, Councillor Troop, and I think this is a high priority, or should be, for this administration, and if more resources are required, then we need to look at how we can ensure that money is shipped from another area of council activity, which is a lower priority, into this area to deliver what I believe is a really important step forward for Derby and for low-paid workers.
Anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? All those in favour?
It's carried.
It's carried. Anybody wish to speak on the substantive motion? Those against? Yeah, okay. Right. Okay, can do.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I mean, as has been said by other members, the Conservative group agrees with the general thrust of the motion. And Councillor Williamson is quite right. As a party, we were opposed at the time to the national minimum wage, and I supported that policy at the time, and I'm not too proud to say that we were wrong and that the introduction of the national minimum wage hasn't been the disaster that was prophesied for it, although at the time we were convinced by those financial arguments that it would be, and I think it has had the beneficial effect that it was required to have on low-paid workers, and I don't think any of us on this side are either too proud or too foolish to say that it hasn't worked in the way that the government wanted it to work. My problem with this particular motion is the commitment on the council and its resources at a time when we're struggling financially and are likely to be struggling in next year's budget. And I'm worried about the commitment to tie the council down to publicity campaigns and deploying staff and all the rest of it, because we cannot deal with the issues quite rightly raised in this motion about the things that need to be dealt with in isolation. It has to be dealt with not just in the city but outside and in other cities that border up to Derby and all over the country. And I think we need to take a more holistic approach to the way that enforcement of the minimum wage is dealt with and the way that enforcement is done. And on that basis, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to move a minor amendment. The amendment is, I hope, non-contentious, but it's rather to prevent the council being locked into resource requirements that it cannot meet, and not to raise expectations that we cannot meet as a council because we haven't got the financial provision. And therefore, what I'm suggesting is that in the paragraph that's numbered 2, instead of mount a council publicity campaign, that we delete the word council and say ask the government to mount a publicity campaign, and that in paragraph numbered 3 that we insert the words ask the government to, so it reads ask the government to deploy staff to build on the work previously undertaken. I think that maintains the spirit of the motion, but rather strengthens it, because it puts the responsibility firmly where it should be in terms of the resources required for mounting a publicity campaign and for continuing the work that's going on with HMRC and with our own staff, puts it fairly and squarely with the government, which is where it should lie, and who should resource it rather than this council in isolation. So I hope that members will see that this is a positive way of trying to strengthen the motion, that it will still have the desired effect, but rather that it will obviate the need for us to use our valuable resources in terms of what the council's got to spend, and put the requirement to mount the publicity campaign and to deploy the staff and all the rest of it squarely with the government and the minister, rather than with the ratepayers, the council taxpayers of this city.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this amendment, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I second the motion.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mentioned earlier this evening that on Monday I went to a conference talking about the credit crunch. One of the strong messages that came out of that conference was that money to be able to combat the downturn in the economy is most keenly targeted by local councils in local areas. This was a message that came out of research that the LGA has commissioned and published this month, and for that reason I think that spending of money to target, in this instance, to ensure that people are getting the level of wage which they deserve and are entitled to, it would be better spent with us in our locality. Now, my preference would clearly be to have the government give us some money alongside the new legislation which Councillor Carr mentioned, for us to be able to do that here, and that is what I would hope will happen. But I do believe that it's our duty for our area and the economy in our area to ensure that that action takes place if we can fund it. And that is the reason for the amendment, to look at that and put the pressure on our budget process to achieve that, regardless of whether we get extra funding from the government. This is a policy which the Liberal Democrats have supported, and I think we actually supported it prior to Labour. And one element of it that I would certainly support in terms of a national change is for the differential pay between the youngest people in the workforce and those over 21 ought to be reviewed. There's clearly also problems with the differential pay between those who are on average sorts of salaries and those who are very highly paid executives, but that is something else again. But in terms of what we ought to be doing, I think we have to accept the responsibility in this council, and therefore I would oppose the amendment.
Councillor Williamson.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm glad Councillor Kerr has made her group's position clear on this amendment. I mean, I was about to, before Councillor Hickson moved his amendment, welcome his remarks, actually, and say I was grateful to him for his, admittance of his, the mistake that his party made on this matter. But he went and ruined it by putting forward the motion that or the amendment to the motion that he has. I mean, look, we're not interested in the spirit of the motion. We're interested in real action. And I think the motion, or the amendment, should I say, that Councillor Hickson has put forward would only have the effect of kicking this into the long grass and would actually mean that we would do nothing. And I think it really is important, and Councillor Kerr on this occasion is absolutely right, that we do need to prioritise it. And if we can get some extra money from the government, great. But, in the absence of that, we need to find a way of ensuring that we prioritise our own resources at a local level. And if we can bring in partnership funding as well, let's do that too. And I would also agree with the point that was made, Councillor Kerr made, about the differential with the younger workers, and I think something should be done about that. That is beyond our control. That is a matter for government, and if we want to make representations on that, I'll be more than happy to do so. But I don't agree with Councillor Hickson's amendment. I welcome the recognition, the conversion on the road to Damascus, as it were, on this matter. But I think it is important that the motion, as amended by Councillor Carr, is what is agreed by Council tonight, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Roberts. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think really I just wanted to raise the one point that in response to what Councillor Hickson said about publicity campaigns, we as a council already do publicity campaigns. For example, we do every year we do a welfare benefits campaign. There is no reason why this campaign about the minimum wage and other related issues as detailed here couldn't be done as part of that campaign. So it's not a lot, if any, extra money really to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? No? Right, all those in favour of the amendment, Councillor Hickson's amendment? Thank you. All those against, please? Right.
Amendment is lost.
Amendment. So, anybody wish to speak on the original motion as amended? Would you like to wind up? No? Right. All those in favour of the motion as amended? Okay. That's carried then. Thank you. Number 3, Councillor Williamson to move. Oh no, Councillor Hussain to second.
Madam Mayor, I mean, much of what we, I think, wanted to say on this proposal, this motion, was said in the earlier debate, and so I don't really want to take up too much more of Council's time on this matter. But I do think that it is important to recognise the fact that today is World Toilet Day. It's almost as if we planned it. And I did look on the website about, World Toilet Day and what it meant. And, it's a sad reflection, actually, because World Toilet Day does have a very, it might sound a bit of a jokey title, but it does have a very serious side to it. And it relates to the lack of sanitation facilities in developing nations. And we are the 4th richest nation in the world. We are one of the richest cities in the 4th richest nation in the world. We're the economic powerhouse of the East Midlands region. Average earnings in Derby are the highest in the East Midlands. So, for us to be in a position
Madam Mayor, can I just raise a point of order, please? I'd like to ask Mr Foote, as we've already taken a vote on the new corporate priorities and reversed the decision on the toilets, and therefore the toilets will remain open, should not this motion be withdrawn?
It's up to the mover of the motion, and Councillor Williamson has moved it, and I think it would be appropriate for that to continue to Council Cabinet.
Sorry.
Yes, indeed.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I just confused actually about the motion as it stands.
Well, let me help you then, Councillor Jennings.
I
can clarify.
Just a moment.
Well, if you're confused, I can clarify.
The paragraph 3 is asking the Cabinet to reverse its decision, which we've already done. So we'll be asking them to reverse the decision.
The Council Cabinet hasn't reversed its decision, but the motion also goes on to say, to ask the Council Cabinet to consider ways of increasing the number of public conveniences, which is a matter over and above the decision that's previously been taken.
Right, carry on then, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And indeed, that was the clarification that I was about to give to Councillor Jennings, but he didn't want to hear it from me. But there we are. Such is life. The point I was going to make, Madam Mayor, before so rudely interrupted, about World Toilet Day, is that it does have, as I say, a very serious side. I've talked about, the wealth of the nation and all the rest of it. We can't be in a position in Derby, surely, where we're talking about, even maintaining the number of public conveniences in view of the vote that we've taken earlier on this evening. There is a very important economic side to this argument, which we touched on in the previous debate, Madam Mayor, and it also clearly does disenfranchise, as a report that Councillor Hussain, when we were having the discussion last year about the proposals that were put forward by officers to close public toilets, Councillor Hussain did dig out a report that had been carried out that showed that by local authorities closing public toilets around the country, it was actually disenfranchising large numbers of people from using the city centres. Now, we've worked very hard in Derby to improve the quality of provision in the city centre. We've brought lots of new inward investment, the new quad building across the way there, the excellent programme that's now on at the Assembly Rooms. And if we haven't got adequate public toilet provision in the city, a lot of people will not be able to use those facilities. So, whilst it might be the case that many local authorities have closed public toilets, surely on World Toilet Day we should draw a line in the sand and say this far and no further. And I don't know why people find that amusing, but there we are. And say that not only are we not prepared to close public toilets, we're actually going to look at how we can increase and expand public toilet provision. Now, I know that the Lib Dems are talking about using public toilets, or should I say toilets in commercial premises. That is one way of increasing the provision, but it's not an answer on its own. So I say simply, Madam Mayor, you can see our banner up there, to the Liberal Democrats, simply leave our loos alone, support this motion tonight, make amends for the mistake that you've made. There is a massive petition on this issue, and I think that we do need to keep these public toilets open and hopefully look to see ways in which we can increase public toilet provision to ensure that everybody in our city, a city for all ages, which is the strapline for the city partnership, can ensure that everybody from all ages can enjoy every aspect of Derby City, both in the centre and in our suburbs.
Councillor Hussain, do you want to second
I
it?
second it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't know the CP number, but I move that we extend the meeting to continue the business.
Too late.
Not too late. Is it seconded?
Is it seconded?
All those in favour?
All those in favour? Those against? Sorry.
The motion is lost, madam.
Motion's lost. Those who are watching that clock there, it's just gone backwards.
It's true, it did move
backwards. So, in that case, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you for your attendance this evening.